Hello, ladies and gentlemen. In this part of the podcast, me and Phil are going to be talking about Codex Aeldari, specifically reviewing Codex Aeldari, because that is what we have chosen to do. And thus, here we are doing it. Now, Phil, being well prepared and sensible, is sat within the confines of his regular space, the shed, with a physical copy of Codex Aeldari, whereas I am sat in a hotel in Sheffield, of all places, wielding the app version of this fabulous tome. So you'll get two perspectives. I have obviously read it. I have obviously thumbed my way through it. So, I already have an amount of insight on the book anyway. I just can't, point to pages and talk about beautiful artwork on this occasion. So Phil will be our resident, page turner, and I will just talk about things in general, I suppose.
That sounds fair enough.
Indeed.
Good.
Are you excited, Phil, to be reviewing Codex Aeldari? It is, after all, after the Imperial Guard, your second favourite faction in all of Warhammer.
That's one way to put it. It's certainly your favourite faction, is it not?
It has been historically, and still is for the most part. I think it is a relatively well understood statement that Elder were, my kind of entry into the hobby. I began my Warhammer 40,000 journey collecting Aeldari, or as they were at the time, Elder miniatures, back in the day. Really love the Elder. Have a warm fondness for them. So excited to get to talk about the latest rules that they enjoy.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And historically, we've always said the Warhammer design team love Aeldari, and that their rules invariably end up being quite good. So it'll be interesting to see if they are or not. Obviously, I know the answer, but you listening at home might not.
Might not. You may not. Although I suppose it is worth highlighting at the start of this, although maybe this is spoiling things, but there has definitely been a lot of chatter amongst the community in advance of the book actually releasing that this is yet another example of the Elder being a broken army. There was a lot of there's a lot of talk on the interwebs basically saying that Games Workshop has yet again delivered another broken Elder Codex.
I can see why. Is all I'm going to say for now.
That's fair.
There's a lot of good stuff in it, for sure.
Absolutely. This is the thing. There really is, and I think for fans of the faction, it's really nice how they have still continued to allow you to kind of express different flavors of Aeldari while excluding Drukhari. Although Drukhari are in the book, which is
quite interesting.
Yeah, really nice. I mean, again, taking a page out of the Age of Sigmar book there, because obviously Age of Sigmar battle tomes, when inserting kind of specific units that you can use in specific army builds, have done this, where they make those battle tomes, or rather war scrolls, available to you in those books. This is obviously the case with this. So there are some Drukhari units in it, and inevitably evidently that is to facilitate you being able to run Ynnari armies. So really cool that they've done that. So this now really does cover the full pantheon of the Aeldari, which is super awesome.
Because like previous editions, it also includes the Harlequins as well.
Indeed. So you have Craftworld, you have Ynnari, you have Harlequins, and you have some Drukhari. This isn't replacing the Drukhari Codex. This just simply has a few Drukhari units in it, so as you can, run said units in your Ynnari armies, which is super nice, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's true. And Dan, if I'm someone that doesn't know what Aeldari is, who are they and what are they about?
Who are they and what are they about? Well, so historically, the Eldari would be described as either the doomed or the dying. If you were to refer to kind of the 40k of old, and you were going to go through, the different kind of buzzwords to describe each of the factions, Eldari, or Elder as they were at the time, were best described as the doomed or dying race. So effectively, Elder represented a time forgotten. So the idea is that they're this ancient civilization that through their decadence and their overall kind of, lust for all things lustful, birthed the god Slanesh, which tore through real space as it was birthed into the world, and essentially created the Eye of Terror, which, for those of you who maybe don't remember this, was essentially the precursor to the Citric Maledictum, the Rift, as it's more kind of commonly known. So the Eye of Terror was kind of the original big tear in real space where the warp was kind of ebbing out into reality, and that was caused by the birth of Slanesh, which was a consequence of all of the decadence and silliness of the Elder. And effectively, over time, Elder within, the Warhammer 40,000 setting have kind of stood as a warning to humanity in terms of the risks involved with believing yourself to have master over the warp and the forces of chaos, but have also served as a kind of MacGuffin in the general story. Whenever you need some kind of mysticism or some kind of grander stakes inserted into a narrative, you sprinkle some Eldari on it because they can add a bit of mystery and intrigue to all of your scenarios, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, the last I read about that happening was it was in the Arcs of Omen, I think, where they went to the Grand Inquisitor with the prophecy of some bad stuff is about to happen. Ooh. And he was like, "Get out!
Get out of you! Get out of my sweet shop!" But yeah, no, that's the thing. Eldari have been heavily linked with that. A lot of it is typically Eldrad Ulthran. So Eldrad Ulthran is one of the kind of pivotal characters, one of the real kind of strong additions to the 40k narrative. So Eldrad has consistently been involved in many, many kind of important events across the span of human history as told within the world of Warhammer. So he was integral to the events of the Horus Heresy and a lot of the things that went on with the various kind of secret societies and cabals that occupied that time and space. He also is instrumental in a number of campaigns or a number of counter offences against Abaddon during various Black Crusades. During the events of the Eye of Terror campaign, he actually pit his psychic might against a demon-infested Blackstone Fortress, and famously, in that story at least, died in that exchange, but got better. He came back, and then as you do, no one's really ever dead. And then, he was very heavily involved in the narrative around Ynnari. He essentially joined the Ynnari, which is something they've since retrospectively gone back in this book. So Eldrad now is kind of parting ways with the Ynnari, which makes sense. I think Ynnari as a kind of general experiment kind of felt like they were going to be something very significant back in 2016, 2017 when they were first introduced as a concept, but have since kind of diminished in their importance. They haven't really kind of grown beyond a couple of head swaps for Aspect Warrior kits and the free characters that they essentially launched with. But there's always a chance that we could see a unique Ynnari range, which would be super amazing. But for the moment, we're just obviously dealing with this kind of weird smorgasbord approach that they've taken with them thus far. So yeah, I mean, broad strokes, that's Eldari. They are essentially a dying race that aren't dead yet, despite having ample opportunities to be so, and have since created a death cult that has essentially been able to sort of change the fortunes of the overall faction so much to the point that they've kind of seemingly got bored of that idea and are doing other things now. So yeah, eventually, I'm sure at some point they'll come up with new reasons why, Eldari aren't dying anymore or they've got better. But yeah, the kind of original narrative hook of the Eldari or the Elder was super interesting. At this point it starts to feel well, I think it's still cool. I love the fluff around them. I think it's really interesting, and by far and away my favorite version of Eldari has always been the Craft Worlders. I think the Corsairs are super interesting. I really like those, cool. and Corsairs are in this book still as well. It's probably worth mentioning, although they are sort of diminished now because they've removed Prince Uriel, so you can't really do an all Corsairs force anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting because much like the orcs, like I want to say it was Badrick and the guy with the jetpack. It's like there's a page dedicated to them in the book, much like Uriel's got, but then his model has been retired and he's not a playable mini, which is odd. But that's just the way of this edition. So there's not.
You have to remind me, Phil. You'll have to remind me because I don't have the book to hand. Is there a page in the book for Illic Nightspear?
Ooh, let's have a quick look.
He was of the Iandan
right.
craft.
Okay.
If that helps find him in any way. Oh no, he wouldn't be. Sorry, he wasn't Iandan. He was Eltok or Elelot.
Okay, hold on. I'm flicking back.
It's all right. It's all right. Because he's definitely been removed as a miniature, but he may still have a page.
Which one was it? Faction?
Eltok, the ranger subfaction.
I mean, if he's mentioned in there, he might be, but there's no page dedicated to it because there's only one page per sort of faction. But obviously, the sort of more sub unique factions like the Corsairs get a little bit more love.
Oh, fine. There you go.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem to be.
There you go. He's extra dead. He didn't even get his own page. Poor old Illic.
No.
I'm gonna incentivize our dear listeners to really kind of go to bat for Illic Nightspear. I feel like that's the guy that we need back before anyone else. It's like don't when they release like the inevitable new Prince Uriel sculpt, I want us all to take to the internet and be, what about Illic? What about Illic Nightspear? Damn you! He was my special boy.
I'm sure he will be for many.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I challenge many. I mean, obviously now they're hearing about him, so they might remember he's a thing. But I bet no one even knew he existed until I've mentioned it just here.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't ring a bell to me, so quite likely for many others as well.
Exactly. This is like old Colour Sergeant. What's his chops from the? Yes, indeed. No. Yeah, he's of that kind of caliber of character, I suppose.
Yeah, the sort of the D to E ranked heroes that often forgotten about.
Well, that's it. With good cause, perhaps, but there we go. But so Elder essentially dying race, very technological to the extent that their technology is essentially magical almost. They use Wraithbone to construct all of these crazy weapons and incredible kind of sci-fi tech, and they use psychic powers and seers to essentially navigate their way through time and space so as to ensure the best plausible outcome for their dying faction. So characters like Aldred Olfran are integral in trying to kind of keep the Elder alive by basically helping them to navigate all of the trials and tribulations that might come their way.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You've given a very detailed synopsis of who they are. I was expecting you just to say space elves and move on quickly. But obviously, you gave a much better example of what they are and what they're about. And yeah, very psychic heavy, as you say.
Oh, they definitely are, and I mean, obviously, in a way, they're one of those factions that actually really suffer from the fact that Warhammer 40,000's 10th edition has done away with a dedicated psychic phase, or
Mm.
even really kind of expanded into kind of like the command phase in a way that kind of makes it more interesting. So yeah, I often find that Elder have definitely become one of those weirder armies this edition because they did so heavily lean into manipulation and utilization, I suppose, of the psychic phase, which obviously has become far less prevalent now. So yeah, it's interesting seeing how that's worked out for them. But they're not like
Yeah, it is noticeable when you look at a lot of the data sheets where it's like a bunch of weapon profiles just have the psychic keyword on it, or it's just an ability, which some of them
yes,
seem pretty strong, and
oh,
it's
very
like,
strong.
and they just go off. They're just automatic because it's an ability now. Whereas at least with the old psychic phases, it's a test that you had to pass. There
Yeah,
was always like a very low chance, or 1 in 32, that you would do damage to yourself.
yep.
But those thematic things, when they did go off, could have a good, like a big impact on the game. And then obviously it was a psychic phase that you could obviously your opponent had a chance to deny it as well. So there's a lot more risk and reward with those, and obviously felt very thematic because it was its own unique phase in the game. Whereas now it's just like a weapon. So you've got to imagine the psychic stuff actually happening as you read that keyword out in your head.
Well, that's it. That's it. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? I suppose because back in the day, the Elder were unique in so much as they were really the only army that had an abundance of access to rerolls. So back before everything rerolled everything all of the time, Guide, Doom, Fortune was really one of the only kind of consistent ways in the game that you would get reroll mechanics.
Mm.
So it's interesting because again, that was another big part of their identity was those free key spells. Being able to boost your output through re-rolling hits, but then also being able to boost your output through re-rolling wounds was extraordinarily powerful, much as it is today. And then, yeah, being able to re-roll saves as it was at one point with Fortune was crazy strong.
Mm.
So, yeah, it's interesting how times have shifted and how those mechanics that were very uniquely Elder have become prolific within the game, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's true.
But there we go. Good times, good times. What do you think of the front cover, mate? How does it rank in terms of imagery for you?
It's all right. It's it's a strong pose. It's yeah, it's all right. It's not wowing me. I think the previous one where it was the Lord sort of flying down on his wings was cooler. I think. Whereas, yeah, I mean, this one's all right. It's just not the best.
I can't disagree with you. I think the last piece with the Altark with Reaper launcher and wings, etc., was really strong.
Mm.
The overall kind of like pose of that particular figure was very angelic, but also very kind of powerful. That juxtaposition of the kind of more kind of frail aspects of the Elder physiology combined with the Reaper launcher of all weapons. That's obviously a very brutal and very blunt force type of weapon.
Mm.
So seeing those two things kind of juxtaposed was really lovely. And yeah, just the overall kind of setting of it was really cool. I think this still delivers, and I think
Mm.
there is an undeniable kind of coolness to the Eldari design. I think Fugan looks really cool on the cover.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but I agree with you. I think it feels very safe. I think probably the it's certainly in the bottom three of Elder Codex covers.
Wow. Okay, that's fair. I mean, it's a strong pose. Is it? He weirdly looks a bit Drukari because he's got like spikes on his armor. It's a bit more baroque than you'd normally see, but I don't know if
Well,
that's just because.
he's a Phoenix Lord, isn't it?
Well, I guess that's also so. Interesting to note. Obviously, he stood on a what looks like an Emperor's Children as
Oh yes, very much an Emperor's
Space
Children.
Marine as well, which is obviously that does tie in quite thematically with the whole Slaanesh sort of storyline between Elder and Chaos, which is makes perfect sense. It'd be one of those guys, and obviously they're coming out quite soon as well.
Frustrating though, especially given the kind of open goal opportunity that they're now moving into a very clearly defined Slaanesh codex with Emperor's Children. That this edition, through the indexes, did away with a number of the Slaanesh specific special rules within Aeldari. So there used to be various rules that the army got specifically targeted at Slaanesh demons, and Slaanesh demons used to have specific rules targeted at Aeldari. But throughout 10th edition, those things haven't really been there. And they're not there now, which is
they've always sort of done away with a lot of those things, because I think Grey Knights and Demons had sort of similar things, even like Guard and Orc, sometimes like around Commissar Yarrick and people like that, you would get them. But I think they always felt like they were an ability that was baked into a unit or an army that obviously was point costed to include it, but 90% of the time you wouldn't ever use that ability because you're just not up against that faction. So I guess it always felt like a bit of a feels bad thing. The way I would have done it is just make it a perk if you just happen to be playing against that thing, rather than like a core rule or something that you're paying points for, because it's like, for the most part, you probably won't be. So just throw it in as it was a really great thematic level to a unit. And so the fact that they've gone is a shame, but given the way the game is at the moment, and that it is sort of, more tournament and more streamlined focused, it makes perfect sense that they have done away with those things.
Oh, I totally agree with you. It makes more sense. I just sort of miss it. I liked the old days of when you were a demon player, you accepted that if you happened to roll up against Grey Knights, you were in trouble.
Yeah.
That was always a fun, kind of asymmetry that I really enjoyed in the game. Because again, it became more about the idea that, this is expressing kind of narrative ideas and more thematic ideas. It's not necessarily about creating perfectly balanced, competitive wargaming combat. It's much more about the story, which, I was always sort of more there for. But, it is what it is. We don't have it anymore. It's fine. It's fine. But no, the cover's fine. I think genuinely, I would say the weakest of the Elder covers, in my humble opinion, were probably the 6th and 7th edition covers, which also
were just like farces on them, weren't they?
Yeah, so I actually quite like, for what it was, I quite liked the Warlock that they put on the cover of 8th edition, sorry, 7th edition, then 8th edition. So the Warlock image was okay. But yeah, there was a Farseer image for 6th edition, and then a Warlock for 7th, then 8th, because 8th edition just reused the 7th edition cover but put a frame around it. So those are probably the 3 weakest Codex covers they've had. But then this, I think, probably sits at number 4. And it's not necessarily to say that it's as bad as the 6th and 7th edition covers. Not that they were necessarily bad either, but, I think this is a step up from them. But I think the thing is, it speaks more to just how amazing and kind of, I suppose, at this stage, iconic their 2nd and 3rd and 4th edition Codex covers were, I suppose.
I mean, the second one is very iconic. That was one
Super
I was going to go for. I can't actually say I know what the 3rd and 4th ones are. I'm sure if I see them, I will recognise them, but they don't. I can tell you what they are.
The 4th edition Codex is a really cool cover. It's basically very similar kind of silhouette in a way. It's a Samhan Altark stepping out of a webway portal, basically with aspect warriors either side of him, and like a falcon flying out and all that kind of stuff. It's really cool. What's really lovely about it is they do a really good job of depicting the grand scale of the webway portal, but also that kind of transition from the one place to another, I suppose. So that was really nice. And again, that had them battling Slaanesh demons. The third edition cover was just a very, very, very over illustrated image of a Dire Avenger Exarch. But it was just really stylistically cool and very kind of quirky in its illustration. They did technically also have a supplement Craft World cover, but that's obviously not Codex Elder, so I'm not going to necessarily include it. By the same token, they also had the Iandan supplement for their 6th edition book, but also not going to include that either.
Right, fair.
Yeah. Although the Codex cover for supplement Iandan's pretty cool.
Oh, okay.
It's a Spirit Seer, looking very Spirit Seer-y. It's very good.
Okay, right. I'll have to check all of these out to remind myself what they look like.
Well, there you go. There you go. Consult the internet, and they will show you all the things. But yeah, and the overall design of the book's fine. I think the actual photography sections are really nice.
Yeah, there's loads of really cool artwork in there as well. Some of it's new. I think there's quite a lot of new, but obviously there's a lot of old artwork in there as well.
It's a real love letter, to be fair. I think, given that this is Jez's baby, it always feels like they've always got more artwork, more stuff, more to talk about when it comes to Aeldari than other factions.
Well, I mean, it's a thick book. It is up there with Codex Space Marines easily. In terms of those sort of chunky codexes. So you can tell it's got a lot of love put into it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Big time. I think, honestly, I think it's really good. I mean, the problem I always have with it at the moment is I think, well, we can get into some of the problems, but again, I think they've sort of advanced some of the lore in interesting ways. But
I heard there was something to do with Wraithbones getting a weird sort of retcon or something, but other than that, I know nothing about it and none of the details. I don't really know much about Wraithbone lore currently, so I have no skin in the game.
Well, the broad strokes with the Wraithbone changes is basically the way that they manipulate or the way that they use it, basically. So they've changed some of the... It's really not important. Joe described it to me perfectly as I don't understand why people are getting upset about how Elder make their houses. It's like, okay. And in a way I thought, yeah, that's a perfect way of describing it.
But here's the thing. If you're an obsessive fan about the game, you do care about those sorts of things. And it is that minutia that people do take really seriously, even though it is a game and it is a fictional setting, but it's like, but that's why you're fans.
Oh, I totally agree. I'm not suggesting that I'm sort of meaning to diminish people's frustration with it. I'm just saying that in the grand scheme of the things that they can change, I'm not that bothered by it. But again, similar, we've had this discussion about other things where I've not been that bothered about it, and I think this is the thing. Like, for whatever reason, GW felt like they needed to make that change. It is what it is. As far as I'm aware, Bone Seers still, still manipulate it. It's still basically serving the same function. It's just slightly different in terms of how it's done.
Okay.
Again. Forgive me, I've not really followed the full extent of the... So if there is something I'm missing, I apologise to people who obviously know more than I do on this matter. I've probably just taken the clip notes on that, because I literally... Yeah, I don't... Maybe I should just be like, I don't know. That's probably the statement that I'll make on that. I have an idea based on what I read, and then trying to kind of like piece it together and basically having a conversation with Joe about it. Right. But beyond that, I've not really kind of consumed much of the kind of stuff that has supported that potential frustration.
Okay, all right, fair.
But there we go. What can you do, eh? What can you do? Cool. Should we talk about some of the rules and things, or is there anything else you want to talk about?
No. There's tons of rules to talk about, so it's probably best if we crack on.
Well, as is sort of now the way of these things, we won't do everything in excruciating detail. One, because it's getting late in this hotel, and I don't know what my neighbour's situation is like, so I don't want to go too far past 11:30 out of respect to potential neighbours. So we've got an hour. We'll see what we can do in an hour. But yes, where do you want to start? I suppose army rules makes the most sense, right?
Yeah.
So the army rule is battle focus. Why don't you tell us what that is, Phil?
So you get battle focus tokens depending on the size of your army. If you're strike force, which is 2,000 points, you get 4. If it's a smaller game, you get 2, and if it's a large game, you get 6. And then it says each time one of the triggers shown in the agile maneuver section below occurs, you can spend 1 battle focus token for the relevant unit to perform that agile maneuver. A unit eligible to perform an agile maneuver if it has the ability and it hasn't already performed an agile maneuver in the same phase. So obviously you can only trigger it once. Unless otherwise stated, you cannot trigger the same agile maneuver more than once per phase. And at the end of the battle round, all unspent battle focus tokens are lost. There are a total of 6 agile maneuvers that you can pick from. Do you want me to read them as well?
We can, skim through them. You've got Swift as the Wind, which is the first of them, which essentially adds 2 to your move characteristic when making a normal advance or fallback move. So, yeah, handy. You need to move an extra 2 inches. You'd be wanting to be moving Swift as the Wind.
And it's worth bearing in mind that all Eldar units are 7-inch move base as opposed to 6. So they're already better. They're already swifter than the majority of most armies anyway. So this is just adding on to it as well.
Need that 9-inch mover, mate. That's what it's all about.
And there are a lot of other special rules for units or the army abilities that add on to this as well. There's flitting shadows. So if a unit is making a normal move, advanced move, or full back move, or is set up on the battlefield or declares a charge, basically until the end of the turn, enemy units cannot fire Overwatch against them.
It's handy. Incredibly handy.
Yes, yeah. Obviously, you've got to sort of know when to activate it. You've got to suspect your opponent's going to use Overwatch, or you just want to guarantee that a charge can go off, or that you're protecting a really key unit. But you've also got 4 battle points to spend, so plenty of chances to use this one.
Well, indeed. It was probably also worth highlighting in terms of the Swift as the Wind ability that you can actually use. You can use that more than once, provided that you use different targets. So multiple units can move as Swift as the Wind. It's fair to say.
Yes, no, that's true. I think that's the only one as well.
Yes, I think so. You've got Star Engines, which is specifically targeting vehicles. So when an eligible vehicle is making a normal move, you add D6 plus 1 to its move characteristic. So it's important to denote that is a normal move, thus doesn't count as an advance in that instance.
Yeah,
it's very handy.
Yeah.
So then you get a better advance, and you still count as having just moved. Handy.
Yes, yeah. So you can charge and shoot as free as you like.
There you go.
Yeah. Then there's Sudden Strike, which is when an eligible unit from your army is selected to fight. Until the end of a phase, each time a model moves, you can make a pile-in or consolidation move of up to 6 inches instead of 3, which feels pretty strong. Very strong. Obviously, there's the caveats that aren't you meant to just directly move Or actually, is piling different from charging? Because when you charge, you've got to go like the shortest possible route to avoid shenanigans. And I would assume that pilings are similar, but I'm not actually 100% sure on that one. I think so long as you move closer.
Yeah, pilings, there's a certain level of... I mean, I guess where it becomes super useful is... I mean, it has lots of applications, but probably one of its more useful functions is being like able to, edge on to the objectives and gain control of those, which is obviously really cool. And in situations, if you're thinking about it, like through the perspective of, say, a unit of banshees, charge them in, kill something, and then, you now, for the sake of one battle focus token, get a 6-inch move. It's pretty handy. There's opportunity seized, which is when the enemy unit ends a fallback move. One eligible unit from your army that started the phase within engaged range of that enemy unit can make a normal move of d6 plus 1. So again, really awesome. Essentially, your opponent will be like, oh, I'm going to leave combat because I'm going to want to gun you down. And then you go, well, I'm going to hopefully roll a 5 or 6 and run behind that wall. That sounds much better.
Yeah, and then there's fade back, which is in your opponent's shooting phase just after an enemy unit has shot. One eligible unit from your army, excluding Titanic, that was hit by one or more of those attacks can make a normal move up to d6 plus 1, which is also sort of similar to opportunity seize, but just triggered in a different time. But yeah,
I like the fact that they've specified that ability triggers after the shooting attack is resolved, though, because obviously
it stops you from going, you can't shoot me now because I've hidden behind a wall before you've actually shot.
Yeah, and I think that really creates an interesting dynamic, which is that ultimately when you are hitting them, you just need to, shoot to kill. Hit them hard. Don't muck around with any kind of, it's like, oh, my, assault intercessor chaplain with jump pack has a bolt pistol. I'm going to shoot at you. Maybe that's not the one to start with.
Right?
You want to go for something a bit more meaningful. And then we also have Desperate Paths, which is when mustering your army, you can only include Harlequin units in your army. When mustering your army, you can include Harlequin units in your army, even though they do not have the Yunari faction keyword. Unless otherwise stated, you cannot select Harlequins or Yunari as your army faction. And then there is another Harlequin rule which specifies the amount of Harlequin miniatures you can take, right? There's like a restriction on Harlequins.
Is that under the Harlequin detachment?
So the Harlequin detachment gets rid of that ruling, but I swear there was, again, it's in the book, but I don't have it. I can't easily locate it in the app. I think I've
seen it anywhere unless it's under.
So if you look at the Harlequin detachment, which is the
Ghosts of a Webway.
Oh, that's it. Yeah. So
that makes troop units battle line. Gives them.
So sorry. I apologise. It's specifically on the data sheets for Death Chesters, Shadow Seers, and Troop Masters. That's where I've gone wrong there.
Let's have a quick look under.
So if you look at the Death Jesters, they've got a rule called Travelling Player. Unless otherwise stated, you cannot include more than one of these models in your army. That's what it is.
Oh wait, hold on. I think the one I'm. Oh, actually, because they're repeated twice. I think. Hold on. Let me just double check. Or are they? I don't know.
But yes, long story short is that you can include Harlequins and it's all groovy, but there are restrictions depending on their data sheets, etc., etc.
Weirdly, I don't actually see that on the data sheet. So is that something they've added onto the app afterwards?
Oh, really? For what, the Death Jester?
No, I'm looking at the troop master. Oh wait, here's the Death Jester. It's got Death is not enough and Cruel Amusements. Travelling players. Okay, unless otherwise stated, you cannot include more than one of this in your army.
Yeah.
Shadow Seer's got that. Weirdly, the Solitaire hasn't. So it's just those two that have it.
But the Solitaire is unique, though, right? Like it's got another. It can only ever be one.
Oh, because it's an epic hero, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. You can't have more than one Solitaire.
Oh, unless otherwise stated. So does it get rid of? Oh, right. Yeah. So the traveling players rule under Ghosts of the Webway. So yeah, it makes troops battle line, but it also says you can include up to 3 of each of the following models: Death Jesters, Shadow Seers, and Troop Masters. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. So weirdly, it's not on the right-hand side of the data sheet under abilities. It's like an extra category under the weapon profile and war gear options. Okay.
But anyway, the long and short of it is that look, I'm not a fan of resource mechanics in Warhammer 40,000 because I feel like at the moment we are at a point where there is enough bloat in the game in terms of like layering of mechanics that more resource management isn't needed. Because I think between the complexity of the missions and the point scoring that they've kind of created, the gameplay mechanics that they've kind of leaned into extensively. I think
you got CP as the main sort of resource mechanic that everyone's doing as well.
Yeah, and again, it just creates this weirdness to me because again, it creates this strange scenario where it's like, cool, I've got command points, but I've also got battle focus tokens or points or widgets, whatever it is, and it's like, and then I spend battle focus on specifically, I spend battle focus on agile maneuvers. It's like why it couldn't all just be called battle focus confuses me in and of itself. But okay, fair enough. I have battle focus and I spend it on agile maneuvers, and each of the agile maneuvers has. So I've got like basically like every army comes with 6 separate stratagems that can only be activated using this completely different resource tracker. I mean, I prefer it to fate dice mechanics, like having pools of dice always really annoys me. I think those mechanics are probably amongst the worst.
Yeah. What's interesting is Fate Dice were the army-wide ability last edition.
Yes.
Fate Dice is still in here under a specific detachment, so you could potentially, if you chose that one, have Fate Dice and this, and both of them have their own, as you say, resource mechanics to them.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm just not a fan of it. I feel like the frustration I have is that these resource mechanics create this very strange kind of like feel bad moment with your opponent where because they're not really sure what's going on and they don't know what the kind of value is of this stuff, and because there's no kind of universal language around it, it's not like stratagems that have like command points and fixed costs and things. This is like a separate resource. And again, 40k confuses me sometimes with the way that it goes. This gets to be an ability. This gets to be a data sheet ability. This gets to be an army ability. This is a resource in addition to command points. This is a stratagem. It's like, okay, it just feels like they're always pulling on lots of different levers all the time. And it always feels like it's never clearly defined why something gets to be a stratagem and why something gets to be an ability. Whereas, again, not to kind of constantly sing the praises of Age of Sigmar, but I like the fact that in AOS you have an army ability that everyone benefits from. You have a war scroll or data sheet ability that the unit benefit from. And then you have the same universal pool of commands, stratagems that everyone uses all of the time. And I think that's a much cleaner way because the distinction between what's a stratagem, what's a data sheet ability, and what's a army ability is so much better defined. Whereas it always feels like with 40k that it's a bit of a random dartboard. It's like, oh, this is what it is now.
Yes. Well, what's interesting about agile maneuvers is I was reading it, I was like, oh, they've got rid of fire and fade. That's not in here, which is really interesting because it always had sort of feel bad mechanics because it would allow the elder player to shoot and then move after shooting, and then duck it behind a wall or something so they can't be shot at in return. Which, if that unit's just constantly popping out shooting and then popping back in, is very uninteractive, because you can't deal with it unless you've got something that can get around that corner. And then literally I turn the page and it's a stratagem in the next detachment, and you're like, oh, so they still do have it, but it's odd that it's not. It feels like it should sit within agile maneuvers. So yeah, it's just odd that, again, as you say, it's odd that they chose it to be a stratagem under a specific detachment and not one of these universal ones. But maybe that's in a way better, because it is quite good and could be quite powerful. So it's actually now got other resource points behind it, so it's got a cost associated to it. It's probably a bit heavier in terms of CP versus the battle focus tokens. Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it as a thing, but obviously, as you're right, it's something you've got to keep track of. It does sort of feel quite thematic, but it's like maybe there would have been another way of doing it without it saying, oh, depending on the size of your army, you got these many tokens. So I don't know. I'd have to think about that one.
Yeah, look, for me, probably the worst culprits of this stuff were some of the 9th edition versions. Like, I always go back to it, but the Cabal point system for the Thousand Suns was like...
Yeah, you had to add up all the total points that all your sorcerers generated, and that allowed you to spend them in different ways on different abilities. That was very complex.
Well, it was the fact that, like, you had, within the range, anyway, we don't need to dwell on it, but it was weird that this sorcerer generates 2, this sorcerer generates 4, this sorcerer generates 6, and this generates 5, and you're like, what? Like, why are all these numbers? Admittedly, those numbers are all wrong, by the way. I think the values were lower, but the point is, it was always just confusing, because it was like, why can't they all just generate 1?
Right? Yeah. Like, because basically, it's like there's several things you need to memorize there. One, the value of each unit in terms of what it's generating, but then you also need to ideally memorize I think probably like 12 or so abilities that you could activate and spend these points on. Whereas this is 6, so it's a lot more simplified.
Well, it's still a lot, though, right? And again, I mean, admittedly, obviously, you get your battle focus. Again, it's not...
I think you made a fair point, though. It's not something your opponent would be aware of. And trying to explain that all of your units can do these 6 different things isn't something they're going to be able to memorize or remember when you're trying to explain it to them, maybe at the start of a battle, because you want to be fair to them. Whereas, as you say, if they sort of triggered universal abilities, that you could be like, cool, I could trigger fights first. Super simple, really easy to explain. And maybe it's like 3 or 4 things as opposed to 6. Like, you could maybe tie it more into universal rules somehow, but then they're so limiting. We always complain when they just, when they roll out the lethal hits and sustained hits, army-wide abilities, that always feels really bland and boring.
I mean, to their credit, this isn't that, so that is definitely a plus. I just think, like I say, resource mechanics, when we already have like a bloat of resource mechanics, is like, oh, for God's sakes. But fine, whatever. It works, but just, call it all battle focus. I don't really understand why it's battle focus and agile maneuvers, each with their own, maybe it's like, and also, anyway, it doesn't matter. That's enough on that particular topic. Let's talk about some of these detachments. Which one's first on the list as far as you're concerned, mate? Warhost, the classic.
Warhost is the generic one. It's at the start of a battle round, you gain an additional battle focus token. So if having 4 wasn't already pretty good, you can now get 5. And I think with Eldrad Elf 1, he can give you an extra one, I want to say. So there are ways of gaining even more if you feel like you don't have enough for some reason. Also, each time a unit from your army performs the Swift as the Wind Agile maneuver, which is the very first one, so when you just make
the +2 movement.
+2 movement, you gain an additional 1 inch to move characteristic, so it's +3. So you are moving 10 inches, just moving. That is Very good.
Ample.
Then, in each time a unit from your army performs an agile maneuver that involves rolling a dice, add 1 to the result. So sometimes you get, so when the vehicle is moving, it's d6 plus 1, that becomes d6 plus 2. And then when you're moving as a result of being shot at or a unit fell back from combat, you're getting d6 plus 2 instead of plus 1. So this makes your maneuvering and running even more maneuverabilities and runnabilities, whatever those words are. Yeah, just really good.
Yes.
Runnabilities. Yeah, you can do a bunch of cool stuff. Should we not read through all the enhancements, but I'll pick one, and it's the first one that is bananas good. It's the Phoenix Gem.
I mean, it always has been good. So
as Yunari model only, the first time the bearer is destroyed, remove it from play, then set them up. You will set them up at the end of the phase, but on a roll of a d6, on a 2+, you can set them back up as close as possible. Blah, blah, blah. But the key thing here, it's with the full wounds remaining. Not with like 1 or 2 or d3 wounds, half your wounds, like pretty much every other army. That's your full wounds down.
That's handy. I preferred it in 8th edition, where it did D3 mortal damage to everyone within, I think it was 3 inches of it. So basically, when it died, it did D3 mortal damage to everyone around it. And if it basically scored a wound, you got back up with said wound.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, it was a much more interesting one because it basically created these interesting scenarios where you'd have like, kind of suicidal warlocks that you just send in and just be like, yeah, whatever. But yeah, that is cool to be fair. I've always liked Phoenix Gem. It's one of the more uninspired versions of it, but still, it's still cool. It's a really cool piece of war gear that's been around for ages. And yeah, pretty cool. I'll go with Psychic Destroyer just because it's expensive, 30 points, so maybe good. Add 1 to the damage characteristic of ranged psychic weapons equipped by the bearer. So again, that's going to be your Destructor, your Eldritch Storm, your I think that's it actually in terms of psychic shooting attacks. But yeah, that's decent. Adding 1 to the damage, very good.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I mean, stratagem-wise, as you say, they got Fire and Fade, which is what it says on the tin. Move after you shoot. Lightning Fast Reflexes, which is subtract 1 from hit rolls against everything that isn't a Wraith construct. So that's super interesting. Anything you wanted to speak about particularly on there?
There's Webway Tunnel.
Oh yeah.
So 1 CP strategic ploy stratagem. 1 at the end of your opponent's fight phase. 1 Ajunari infantry unit that's wholly within 9 inches of 1 or more battlefield edges. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't spot that when I read. So you've got to be within a battlefield edge. If you're not within engagement range of 1 or more enemy units, you can remove it from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserves. So you can hop off and on again.
Very handy.
On the table. So super handy if we're doing battle tactics and things like that. Really good. And I'll say it here now, because I was like, oh, right, they're doing these mechanics of every army has it, jump off the board and come back on again, and there's other things that can do it in this book as well. But at least there's a limitation on you getting into strategic reserve. You're not deep striking, so it's not as powerful as some other abilities. But I was like, it doesn't feel that thematic because you already have the Webway portal as a faction terrain piece.
Yeah.
But guess what, Dan? You don't.
What, Phil? Oh, okay. Is it gone?
The Webway portal's gone. It's not in here.
I didn't notice that. They've actually removed that as well, have they?
It's not. There's no data sheet for it. I presume it's not available to buy at the moment.
I mean, it was available up until. I mean, I saw it on the store a few months ago, but obviously, maybe has gone since.
Let's hold on. Let's. If I type in Webway. Oh no, nothing seems to appear.
No, it's gone. It's gone the way of the dodo now.
Yeah, must have. Which is, yeah, that's a shame. Odd, because it's relatively new. Didn't it only come out in 9th edition? I want to say. Yeah, I'm
No,
pretty
it
sure it was
wasn't.
9th.
No, it wasn't ninth. I think it came
It wasn't
out
8th.
in. I think it was eighth. You know.
I think it was early. I want to say it was early 9th. I mean, it could have been 8th. Maybe. That feels like.
I feel like it was eighth.
Maybe. It hasn't. It's not lasted long. It seemed odd. It felt like it was a thing they were going to commit to. Every faction gets a terrain piece, a bit like in AOS.
Yeah, but that's not the case anymore, though, is it? Because they've been kind of like reversing back on that over the course of this edition.
Yeah, and part of me feels like it's just because they can't keep up with the supply of making stuff that they've kind of gone, well, let's just cut out the faction terrain pieces. Although, ironically, the Aegis defense line, which did come out in Nightfall Guard, is still there. And maybe they've gone, well, that's a new kit, so we're going to sort of support that a bit longer. I'm pretty sure it is. I haven't seen the codex, so I'm speculating because of the index. But I would assume it's still in there.
The sisters lost their statue.
That went ages ago, didn't it?
The GSE lost their drill.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Have
Space Marines ever had anything? The bunker, but
they've still got the Hammerfall bunker. To be fair, they still got that, and the mech. The Orcs lost their big mech workshop, you know, but they kept their big face, you know.
Yeah. For now, the little bunker thing,
their boss tower or whatever it's called. But yeah, no, the Warhost seems. I mean, it seems like a solid all-rounder. The strats all seem really useful. The abilities are evidently very good as well. It seems like a pretty solid baseline detachment, to be fair.
Yep. No, they're good, I think. The next one is Windrider Host.
Oh, okay.
I think this one's good.
Tell me more.
So, in the Declare Battle Formation step, you can set up Aeldari mounted and Viper units from your army in reserve. During the battle, such units can be set up on the battlefield as if they were arriving from strategic reserve. For the purposes of setting them up, they count as being one battle round higher than it actually is, which is very good in terms of where they can be positioned. Additionally, at the end of your opponent's turn, you can select a number of Aeldari mounted or Viper units from your army, excluding ones in engagement range. Then remove those from the battlefield, and guess what, Dan? You place them in strategic reserve. And the number depends on the size of the battle. So, a 2,000 point game, you can put 2 back into reserve. Perfect for those battle tactics. Again, much like the Webway Tunnel stratagem, you're obviously only going to be coming in from battlefield edges because they don't have deep strike, so that's something. But they're still really good, especially when you can come on as a round higher. So from round 2, you can be anywhere, basically.
Yeah, very, very, very strong. I think, you know, a reasonable excuse for maybe picking up a couple of old Viper kits, I guess.
Yeah, quite likely. And then in terms of enhancements, I'll pick the Seer Sight Strike. So it's the psychic model only on that's mounted. And then the psychic weapons get anti-monster 2+ and anti-vehicle 2+.
Nice.
I mean, I don't know how well their weapons synergize with those, but, you know, might be quite good.
Yeah, I mean, so psychic weapons equipped by the bearer have. Yeah, I mean, so that would extend.
So you can
they do have a psychic shooting.
Eldritch Storm, which is D6 attacks, hit on freeze, strength 6, -2, D3 damage. Yeah, there's the Shuriken Pistol is just a normal thing. Oh, the Singing Spear is their psychic one, which is 1 attack, 12-inch range, hit on freeze, strength 9, no AP but 3 damage. And they've also got, is it shooting only? Oh no, it says psychic weapons. So it also includes the Singing Spear psychic melee attack, which is 2 attacks, hitting on 2s, only strength 3, no AP, 3 damage. Yeah, so some of them are lacking AP, but the fact that they're low strength and now you're doing anti-vehicle and monster on 2+ does give you some use to it.
Well, I suppose they're now in an interesting thing, I suppose, because the only mounted hero characters that you can use this on are now the Warlock and the Farseer, right? Because they've removed the Altark on jet bike. So
it's just the Farseer Skyrunner I can see.
oh, have they removed the single Warlock character? I swore there was like single Warlock.
Is it a character?
Yeah, normally. Well, let me.
Then it's not at the front. You got Shining Spears.
Check.
Oh no, yeah. Sorry, you do have a Warlock Skyrunners.
Yes.
Oh, it's because you can have up to 1 to 2 of them in a unit. So, but they do get attached. Yeah, they've got sort of similar sort of profiles, basically.
Yeah, and the Way Leaper now is just infantry, so it has Aeldari jump back fly. Because in a way, the Way Leaper Autark can be representative of the Autark on jet bike model. So if you have the old Autark on jet bike model that you love using still, you kind of can get away with representing it on the tabletop as a Way Leaper. But it's not mounted, so it wouldn't benefit from that ability. But yeah, interesting. Yeah, the one that I'll probably talk about or will talk about, Mirage Field. So, as in our mounted model only, each time the target attack targets the bearer's unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Really useful when you think about.
It's really strong because it's the unit that it's going to be attached to, right?
Yeah, so you think about the synergy, and you think about the fact that you're going to be kind of zipping in and out, but obviously being taken off the battlefield happens at the end of your opponent's turn, correct? So at the end of your opponent's turn, you go back in reserves. So being -1 to hit obviously just gives you increased survivability, which is super useful because Lord knows those bike squads aren't crazy survivable on their own. So being able to add a -1 to hit debuff is pretty good.
No, that's strong.
Stratagems, Phil?
In terms of stratagems, I'll just do Death from on high. So when it's a shooting or fight phase, when an Aeldari mounted or Viper unit from your army is set up on the battlefield from reserves, when you're using the Ride the Wind ability, obviously, you can re-roll the wound rolls.
Ooh.
And that's 1 CP.
It's not bad, is it? That's not bad.
It's not too bad. Not too bad.
Nothing here is crying out to be read here, but I'll go with focused firepower because it sounds interesting. So your shooting phase, either mounted or Viper units that's selected to shoot. Until the end of the phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack, improve the arm penetration characteristic of that attack by 1. So again, pretty handy.
Yeah.
Pretty handy.
I'll quickly mention that Daring Riders allows you to basically, in the reinforcement step, basically instead of setting them up from reserves, you can set them up anywhere on the battlefield within 3 inches of your opponent's models. Obviously, that's now 6, right? Yeah. Because of the overall balanced state slate. But basically, it gives one of those units that should be coming in from the table edge the ability just to be anywhere and really close. So it's not like it's just given them deep strike. It's given them the very best version of deep strike possible, which is the general summary of a lot of this book. It's not just got a good thing, it's got the very best possible version of it, much like I was complaining about when you bring that character back from the dead.
Yeah.
It's like it's got all the wounds, not just 1 or 2 wounds.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the consistent kind of wibbles with Warhammer 40,000's depiction of the elves. They're always consistently the very best of what they can be. And it begs the question how they ever died out in the first place. I mean, obviously, they birthed a chaos god, didn't do themselves any favors. But it's an interesting set of variables on that front. But yeah, for whatever reason, GW rules writers love them elves, and that is evident. What's the next one?
Spirit Conclave. So it
Okay.
is one of the 2 psychic detachments that they're
Ooh.
giving us. Each time an Aeldari Psycho model from your army is destroyed by an enemy unit, that enemy unit gains a Vengeful Dead token. Oh, look, more resource management, Dan. Each time a Wraith Construct model for your army makes an attack that targets a unit with 1 or more Vengeful Dead tokens, add 1 to the hit roll and add 1 to the wound roll. Obviously against the unit. That's strong, but obviously it requires a Psyker to die.
Yeah.
Aeldari Psyker models from your army also have the following ability. So Spirit Guide, which is an aura ability, while a Wraith Blade, Wraith Guard, or Wraith Lord unit from your army is within 12 inches, that unit has the Battle Focus ability, because they don't normally. So the Battle Focus ability allows you to do all those agile abilities with those points. Also, Wraith Blades... sorry, go on.
Except for the abilities they can't do for some reason, which I don't think is any of them. I don't think any of them are... Some of them are non-Titanic, but...
Yes, yeah. Some exclude Titanic, and obviously one's vehicle specific, I think. So I guess it wouldn't be that one. Also, Wraith Blades, Wraith Guards gain battle line. So it's an odd one, because normally I don't like these kind of abilities where it's like it revolves around you dying to gain a perk. But +1 to hit and wound is very strong. So if you could spam as many Psychers as possible and just send them forth to die, and if they're very cheap, it's a win-win.
Well, the Warlock is 45 points, so you could take 3 of them, and that would be a cool 135 points. So just fling them forwards and watch them die.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. In terms of the enhancements, I'll go for Stave of Kurnos. Spirit Seer model only. In your command phase, select 1 friendly Wraith Construct unit within 12 inches, excluding Titanic units. Until the start of your next command phase, each time a model in that unit makes an attack on a critical wound, that attack has precision.
Wow.
Which is quite cool.
Yeah, it's alright, that. I'll go with Higher Duty. So the Spirit Seer model only, once per turn. When an enemy unit ends a normal move, advance, or fall back move within 9 of the bearer's unit can make a normal move of up to 6.
That's very good.
Yeah, it's really decent, to be fair. Getting an out-of-sequence move of 6 inches on the regular is very, very cool. The Light of Clarity, what's that? I just want to see it. Oh, add 1 to the objective control.
Unless it's a monster.
Unless it's a monster.
And then it's add 3.
Nice. Not bad. Not bad. Stratagems. I mean, bunch of words here. Wraithbone Armor. Your opponent's shooting phase, 1 Wraith Construct unit from your army that was selected as the target, 1 will attack units until the end of the phase. Each time the attack allocates allocate to the model in your unit, subtract 1 from the damage character. Oh, interesting. This wouldn't be one of those ones that now can only be targeted against one source. It'd be one of those things that could affect multiple sources, right?
No, because it's like Armor of Contempt, right? So you surely it would only be affected.
Well, I think the Armor of Contempt stipulation is specifically around impacting AP as opposed to impacting damage.
Oh, right, yes. Oh, wait, so Seer's Eye does have... Oh, wait, is that specific? So Seer's Eye is the one above, which is basically when you're being shot at. Select 1 enemy unit visible to the Psyker. Until the end of that phase, each time a model in your Wraith Construct unit makes an attack, you ignore any modifiers to the armor penetration and or damage characteristics of that attack. Oh, that's when you're doing your shooting. Sorry. So yeah, okay. So it's, not quite. Yeah, maybe it does work then. Yeah,
maybe. I read it as if you basically pop it and then you get it against all incoming attacks, which is super powerful.
Because it does say until the end of the phase, so technically.
Oh, fine. Yeah.
Because Armor of Contempt was specifically the rule in the battle thing. What's it called?
What are you talking about here, pal? The Codex?
No,
The rulebook?
the season rules.
Oh, the oh, for God's sakes, why do I always forget the name of it? The thing, the oh God.
Too much time hanging out with Age of Sigma guys, basically.
Yeah, but even then, I think it's oh God, I can see the image of it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Yeah, people know what it is. We don't.
Yeah,
Move on.
but the rule you're talking about, where it's like, yes, it's updated Armor of Contempt and similar things, is just, I think, around AP modification, and that it only is from one source of attacks. I assume it doesn't include damage as well.
Yes. No, it's not even here in the book. Rules update and commentary, combat patrol, imperial armor, codex FAQs and erratas. Oh, for God's sakes, why can I not find the thing? Oh, it
Surely
doesn't
it's
matter.
under core. Oh, I would have thought it'd be under core rules, but maybe it's
No, it
not.
doesn't seem to be.
Oh.
Other rules. No, I can't find it.
Oh, balanced data slate. That's it. Oh,
Balanced data slate. Good
It's
God.
under key documents down in the app.
I can't lie, Phil. As I was trying to remember the name of that, I felt like my head was going to explode. I was like, how can I not remember this? This is like, I worry that this is one of these things that.
I'm getting old.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I think it is. I'm like, oh my God, is this the signs of my.
Is it the brain tumour that's coming on? Is that it?
Oh God, I hope not a brain tumour. Although, I don't know, maybe it'll be quite a blissful way to go.
I was going to pick for stratagems Soulbridge, Dan.
Go for it. What is the Soul Bridge?
So you pick one. It's in your command phase. You pick one Wraith Blades, Wraith Guard, or Wraith Lord unit from your army, and one Aeldari Psyker model from your army. Until the start of your next command phase, that Wraith Blade, Wraith Guard, or Wraith Lord is considered to be within 12 inches of your Psyker for the purposes of Psychic Guidance and Spirit Guides. And for those, we need to quickly look at the
rules.
The rules under the what did I say?
The Spirit Seer
model, Spirit Seer.
Yeah.
So is it under Warlock? No, because that's
no Spirit Seer. Is its own entry, mate.
Hold on, let's go find it because I assume it's at the beginning.
Spirit Seer abilities. Spirit Seer. Spirit Mark. Was it Spirit Mark?
It was Spirit Psychic Guidance and Spirit Guides ability.
Oh, where's that then? Is that not a Spirit Seer rule? Is it a Farseer rule? Abilities? No.
Oh.
What's the name of this rule again?
So Soulbridge talks about your one Aeldari Psyker, and it's for the purposes of psychic guidance and spirit guides. So weirdly, the Farseer's got a guide. Is it?
Yeah, but that's a specific spell.
Yeah, psychic guidance, spirit guide ability.
Give us a moment, dear listeners. We're gonna offline this and figure this out. Be right back. Hello again. We're back. Phil, what the heck were we talking about?
So we're talking about Soulbridge, trying to find psychic guidance and spirit guide abilities. Who knows where they are, except now us. We have found the psychic guidance that is under the data sheets for the Wraith Lords and the other Wraith constructs. Basically, psychic guidance, while this model is within 12 inches of one or more friendly Aeldari Psyker models, improve the ballistic skill and weapon skill of the weapons equipped by one, and the leadership characteristic becomes a 6+. So mostly the Wraith Lord's hitting on 4s, that obviously becomes 3s. The Wraith Knight doesn't have it, and then the others also hits on 4s, so that becomes 3s. So pretty good. And then where would Spirit Guides be? That's actually the Spirit Conclave Detachment Special Rule, which basically gives you battle focus within 12 inches. So obviously you can do that anywhere.
Incredible.
instead.
There we go.
That's quite a good one, I think.
Yeah. Look, I mean, Wraith constructs are by far and away one of the more kind of like lower barrier to entry ways of doing the Eldari army. Like, relatively speaking, point per pound or dollar or, euro. I was about to say franc. But that hasn't been the currency in France for some time now. But my point is that like it's a more kind of affordable way of maybe doing the army, and it actually does create kind of like a nice kind of synergistic kind of complete army look. One of the things that's really odd about the Aspect Warriors is that they're essentially kind of almost like a Power Ranger-esque kind of.
They're all different, aren't they? And they're all different colours and stuff like that.
Yeah. And there is something innately cool about the Wraith construct, so I'm there for it. I say do it, but
it's been a while since I've seen a Wraith Knight on the table. Whereas in 7th edition, they were the staple unit that everyone had at least one of.
You obviously weren't playing 10th edition at the very start, then.
You
were.
I think the guy. I think we both played him in not the last RFW, but the one before, which I think was the start of 10th. He had one in that, so maybe but that's the only one I've come across this edition.
Fair. At the start of 10th edition, if you went to a competitive event, they were everywhere.
Oh, quite a lot then.
Yeah, but they got nerfed very quickly. What's the next one? Is it Aspect Host? Or
no, it's Guardian Battle Host.
Ooh.
This one's got a super simple detachment rule: defend at all costs. Each time Dire Avenger, Guardian, Support Walker, or War Walker, support weapon or War Walker model from your army makes an attack. If the model's units or the target unit are within range of one or more objective markers, add one to the hit roll. Very good.
Yeah,
nice and
strong
simple as well.
I like it. I mean, I like it thematically just because of the idea of giving the Guardians a bit of love. Although I struggle a lot with the idea of making them better. And I also struggle with the notion that you've kind of wrapped or rolled up Dire Avengers in there, because Dire Avengers feel very much like the quintessential Aspect Warrior. So it's sort of a shame that they're in here with them, because it kind of almost diminishes the Dire Avenger, which I think is a shame, but whatever.
Yeah, I sort of get it though. I think the Dire Avenger data sheet is sort of it's not very interesting in comparison to.
It has been in the past, Phil. It has been in the past.
For the enhancements, I'm going to select the Ethereal Pathway. So, as an army model only, in your deployment step, select up to 2 Guardian units, and they gain the Infiltrator's ability.
Oh, very nice. It's weird that they have an Ethereal Pathway. I thought that was a Tau thing, but...
It says, knowing secret path through the webway, the bearer can direct warriors to outmaneuver the foe. So, yes, it's both ethereal and it's just a webway portal.
Oh, fine. Yeah. Fine. A Craft World's champion, the bearer has an objective control characteristic, or an OC, of 5. So that can be super cool. Obviously, if you're looking at, adding in, I don't know, Autarchs or Farseers, and maybe a, Wind Rider variant to have a bit of mobility. The extra OC is always interesting. I dare say, I mean, I don't want to kind of jinx it, but I'm guessing this is one of the weaker detachments.
I think so. Most of them, I would say, are really strong. This is one of the weaker ones. And we've not talked about it yet, but there are a lot of detachments in here, and they probably could have done with pruning 1 or 2 out.
Well, in a way, it kind of is. Yeah, this one should probably have just gone, shouldn't it?
Let's keep reading. Anyway, so stratagems, I'm going to go for cost of victory. So, end of your opponent's fight phase, select 1 Guardian's unit from your army. If your unit is not within engagement range of one or more enemy units, remove it from the battlefield and place it into strategic reserve, which you would think would be enough, but oh no, Dan, no. When doing so, return every destroyed Guardian model to your units. For 1 CP. Isn't that good?
That is 1 CP is the cost of victory, Phil.
But it is. It literally is the cost of victory. And it's a bargain price.
Well, there. That's pretty reasonable. That's pretty good. What have we got here? Time to strike Blades of Asuryan. Let's go with that. 1 Dire Avengers or Guardian unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot this phase until the end of the phase. Ranged weapons equipped by models in that unit have the pistol ability. Okay, that's pretty strong. I mean, obviously not incredibly strong if you've targeted a Storm Guardian unit, but my guess is that they have the Storm Guardian keyword as opposed to just Guardian.
Maybe. Yeah, but it weirdly combos quite well with cost of victory if you're stuck in combat and you want to escape combat. And you've got a couple of turns to do it.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, it feels very similar to the very first one in terms of it's a bit of an all-rounder, but I guess this one's much more focused on your generic foot troops as opposed to the more elite units that some of the others lean into. The next one is the Harlequin one, so that is Ghosts of the Webway.
Sorry, Phil. I'm gonna interrupt. I'm gonna say, for the interests of time, we're gonna transition to a new location. So I won't do a transitional noise. We'll just
carry on.
Fair. No wobbly book.
No, I don't know. Some of the pages look a bit wobbly. You see?
They do look a bit wobbly. Yeah, that's got to be.
Might be because it's been in the shed overnight, maybe.
Different paper stock, all sorts of variables.
Who knows? Yeah, could have been something else. Well, whoever I sell this on to will maybe be like, "Oh, it's not perfect. It's a bit dodgy."
Fair. All right. Well, anyway, hello everyone. We are now recording the following day, which is why, if you're watching this, I'm in a different place. So fun for me. Going home tomorrow though, so that's nice. So yes, win-win. Where were we, Phil?
Ghosts of the Webway, talking about Harlequins.
Yes, that's the Harlequin one, isn't it? Very exciting. So, tell us what it is, Phil.
So they get Acrobatic Onslaught, which is each time a Harlequin's model from your army makes a charge move, it can move through enemy models.
Ooh.
So like a, not quite fly ability. They also get Travelling Players, which is what we looked at a little bit earlier. So troop units gain the battle line keyword, and troop models also count as OC2. And you can include up to 3 of each of the following models: Death Jester, Shadow Seer, and Troop Master. Because, as you pointed out before, the stipulation is you can only have 1 of each if you're taking them in a regular other Aeldari detachment.
Very good. Some of their enhancements include Murder Jester, which sounds like a marvellous night out. Death Jester models only each time the bearer makes an attack that targets a unit that is below half strength. Each successful hit roll scores a critical hit.
So I looked at this one earlier. It is mad good what this does. So let us quickly deviate off to the Death Jester gun. So admittedly, it only triggers on half strength, but anything it's shooting is going to die because the Shrieker Cannon has a 24-inch range. 24-inch range, 3 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, -2 AP, and 2 damage. And you'd be like thinking, oh, but where's the critical hits? What's it doing? Well, the Death Jester has an ability called Cruel Amusement, which is in your shooting phase. Each time this model is selected to shoot, select one of the abilities below for the Shrieker Cannon. You can give it Ignores Cover. You can give it Precision, you can give it sustained hits 3. 3?
Well, you wouldn't want to just, get sustained hit 1. And I mean, ultimately, when you've got sustained hits 2, you may as well have 3,
So the maximum number of shots you can do, is it something like 18? It's no, it's 3 times.
3 times 6.
Yeah, so each 3 gives you another. No, each one gives you another 3, so it's 4 times 3, so 12, right?
Well, I mean, 4 times 3 is 12. How many shots did it have? 3?
3 in total.
Oh, yeah, so 12.
So 12 shots, which is a maximum of 24 damage that you can do.
There you go.
From one guy, hitting on 2s, critical hits on a 5. So each hit gives you effectively 4 hits.
Amazing.
Which is pretty strong.
There you go.
Yeah, -2 damage. You could easily murder Space Marines with that, with ease. I sort of feel like that's strong. Again, it's not just like, sustained hits 1. It's not even sustained hits 2. It's the very best option, sustained hits 3.
Yeah, but you do need to take the murder clown detachment in order to get the murder jester.
No, that is fair. That is fair.
So you do need something that is good. Yeah, it does, absolutely. Yeah. Like, you're going to take it, but, how good is the rest of the stuff?
That's true. Let me let's do the Troop Master one, which is Kagora's Coil. So Troop Master model only. Each time the bearer's unit ends a charge move, select one enemy unit within engagement range of the bearer's unit, then roll 1d6 for each model in the bearer's unit. On a 4+, they suffer a mortal wound, up to a maximum of 6 mortal wounds.
Pretty reasonable.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah,
then there's a bunch of stratagems. So I'm going to call on the one that seems to be appearing everywhere. Exit stage, or exit the stage. 1 CP strategic ploy. It's the end of your opponent's fight phase. Guess what? You take 1 Harlequin's unit that's not within engagement range and you put them back into strategic reserve.
Yay! Do they come back at full strength?
No, not this time. No.
Oh, well, there you go. Can't have it all.
No, exactly. No, unfortunately.
Poor old Harlequins. They're just losing out. You've got Mocking Flight. That sounds interesting. So, just after a Harlequin's unit for your army falls back, that Harlequin's unit being the target until the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to shoot or declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back, which is super cool. So yeah, the ability to leave combat, shoot and charge. Solid. And presumably after charging, fight, which obviously you would be able to do if you were successful. So yeah, very strong.
Yeah, I think all the stratagems are actually quite
they seem quite decent, to be fair. The aerobic onslaught ability to be able to charge move through things is super interesting, only because I guess one of the scenarios is obviously you can blast through like screening units, etc., etc.
Yeah.
But you are then still innately going to be gambling on longer charges, right?
Yes, if you're declaring if you're trying to get to a charge deliberately the unit behind and you're declaring that as the charge. But I guess what you'd be better, well, depending on the position, right, it might be you declare the first unit, the screen unit, as the charge, you just jump over it, and hopefully in doing so you can also still get within base of your other unit if they were close enough together. But obviously you've always got to be base to base now, so it's a bit more difficult to do.
Because the weird nuance of it is that you need to end as close as possible to the thing that you're declaring against. So the ability to phase through it is useful in so much as you can get around the back of it, but you're not going to be able to kind of catapult past it unless you declare the thing.
Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, it's underwhelming, is essentially, but I'm sure some very highly skilled players can use it in very particular ways, but whatever.
Yes, I see what you mean. If this was the rules for charging from 8th edition and you had this, or let's say even 9th edition, this would be much stronger.
Yes.
But because of the wording of the charge phase now, it's you are sort of restricting yourself in terms of what you can do with it.
Indeed. What's the next one, pal?
On to Devoted of Yanid. So this is the Ynnari one. They get Strength from Death, which is basically you get the following 3 rules. So you get Lethal Intent, which is at the end of your opponent's shooting phase, if one or more Ynnari units from your army were destroyed this phase, select 1 Ynnari unit from your army, excluding Titanic units, and they can make a normal move.
Handy.
So that's a movement of normally 7 inches in your opponent's, shooting phase, which is pretty strong. Then you get Lethal Surge. So once per turn, when a Ynnari unit from your army performs a fade back agile maneuver, it can make a Lethal Surge move instead of a normal move. If it does, roll 1d6 and add 1 to the result. That unit can be moved a number of inches up to the total. When doing so, those models can be moved within engagement range of enemy units that just triggered the agile maneuver. So basically you get a chance to tag them back into combat once they've fallen back. So
very nice.
Like situational, I guess, because it's requiring people to run away from you, but that will be quite strong, I think. Especially when it can make a lethal move. Oh yeah, so you still got to roll, right? So you're doing your d6 plus 1, so it's it's not guaranteed that you'll roll well. And then the last rule is well, sort of technically 2. There's Lethal Reprisal, which is at the start of a fight phase, select 1 Ynnari unit from your army, excluding Titanic. That is below its starting strength. Until the end of the phase, that unit has Fight First ability.
Decent. Really decent.
That's really cool. And then the last thing is Servants of the Whispering God. So this is all about building your army. So it says you can include Ynnari units in your army, even though they don't have the Aeldari faction keyword. Aeldari units excluding epic heroes from your army gain the Ynnari keyword. And then it says you must include Yvrain or the Yinkon in your army, and one of those models must be your warlord.
Yep.
Which is
very cool. I mean,
makes sense.
Obviously, yeah, because in the past, the way the Ynnari stuff has worked is it's kind of not benefited from the army-specific rules. So, like in the past, I'm fairly certain that Ynnari didn't benefit from the Fate dice mechanic, or at least they didn't in 9th edition. They may have done in the 10th edition index. But it's really interesting to imagine now that obviously how these abilities further synergize with your battle focus. So being able to utilize battle focus and bring that into effect is kind of interesting. Again, what's weird about it, I suppose, is I believe battle focus is specifically triggered upon as a Ynnari unit, so it's usually I was checking the rules. Oh no, here you go. If your army faction is as Ynnari, at the start of the battle round, you receive another battle focus tokens. So, as far as I'm aware, if you take this devoted to the Yanid thing, you're still an as Ynnari army, right? You still get battle focus, right, Phil?
Yeah. That sounds right.
Fine. So yeah, basically the way that sort of synergizes is super interesting because they've not been specific with as Ynnari keyword on the things that can utilize that ability, which makes sense because obviously it's intended to work with Harlequins as well as the specific Ynnari units in this codex, such as the Drakari models, etc. So yeah, super interesting, very agile, very finicky, I would say.
Yeah. In terms of enhancements, there's Gaze of Yanid, which is Farseer model only. The bearer's Eldritch Storm weapon has devastating wounds. And if we flick over to the Farseer, so the Eldritch Storm is blast and psychic. It's a 24-inch range shooting attack. D6 attacks, hitting on 3s, strength 6, AP -2, and then damage D3. So the fact that all of those are just devastating wounds. Obviously, you still got to roll for it, right? But I mean, it could be pretty good if you roll well enough. But it's nice little touch.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty reasonable. The one I was going to talk about was the borrowed vigor. So add 2 to the attack characteristic of the bearer's melee weapons, and it specifically targets archons, which is super cool because the archon is pretty fighty anyway. So archons typically have 5 attacks with their husk blades. So this would be 7 attacks, which is pretty reasonable. Husk blades are pretty good AP, good damage. I think they're AP free, 2 damage. In fact, let me just check because maybe the Yanari version of this.
The Archon is 5 attacks, hang on 2, strength 3, 2 damage, and 2 AP.
Oh, okay, fine. And then anti-infantry 3+.
Anti-infantry 3+, yeah.
Yeah. Abilities. Oh, okay, fair enough. Oh, no, he does have... so it's Reborn Mastermind is what it's called here. Fine, fair enough. But yes.
And it can re-roll wound rolls as well, depending on its the unit. So the unit is attached to? Or the unit... Oh, yeah, if it's leading a unit each time a model in that unit makes an attack, yeah. Okay.
Nice.
So,
very cool.
That could be quite interesting. Would you like to pick a stratagem?
I would love to. I will go with Deaf Answers Deaf. Sounds compelling. 1 Yanari unit from your army, excluding Wraith constructs, which I presume you can't even... Oh, you must be able to take them. An odd little... Anyway, let's not get into that. If one or more models in that unit were destroyed this phase, your unit can shoot as if it were your shooting phase. Strong.
Yeah. You can take all the units, but they gain the Yanari keyword.
Interesting way of working around it, because previously you weren't able to take the wraiths, or rather the ghost stuff. You weren't able to actually take that in Yanari, so that's interesting. I mean, again, well, I suppose actually they probably benefit from the Yanari rules quite consistently because they would get the additional movement, etc. But yeah, much in the same way as you couldn't take the homunculus stuff, I don't think you could take the Wraith stuff before. So giving them access to the Wraith stuff is super interesting.
Yeah. I was just thinking about it. Like, you're right, they don't have the Azunari keyword, and they don't gain it. So surely they don't get the army...
well, they do, because it's not specific in what it triggers. So you have to have an Azunari army, which is what this is.
If your army faction is Azunari, but the core faction keyword for them is just Yanari.
Yeah, but you're going to take Azunari units, and it's... Yeah, that's where it got a bit weirdly nuanced for me.
Yeah, because all the others are faction keywords. So I would assume it's predominantly you've got like your Yanari characters and possibly a couple of Yanari exclusive units like your Dark Elder Drakari.
Well,
and everything else is Azunari. And the core sort of faction keyword that they all share is Yanari, because that's what the special rule gives them. So it's weirdly, technically not an Azunari faction.
Yeah, but then to the same extent, the Harlequins don't have Azunari keyword either.
Oh, wait, but hold on. The Disparate Path says, when mustering your army, you can need Harlequin units in your army, even though they don't have the Azunari faction keyword. But then it does specifically say, unless otherwise stated, you cannot select Harlequins or Yanari as your army faction.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that just needs... It's odd that then it means your Harlequins and your Yanari lose out on potentially the army ability, which doesn't seem like it would make sense.
Yeah, the whole thing is a little bit convoluted. But yeah, long story short is I'm pretty sure... Well, you can now take Wraith constructs, and then you can also have them running around using Yanari rules and, battle focus, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that's because one of them, because so in the devoted of you need, it specifically says when you do a fade back agile maneuver, so you must
Yeah.
be able to, even though sort of rules as written, it doesn't seem like you technically can, based
Well, I think
on the
rules as written, it means you can. Rules as written, you definitely can. It's just the thing is yeah, I think once you start to try and apply some logic to it, that's where it starts to crumble.
yeah, odd. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, who knows? Anyway, so we were, sorry, let's go back to the you need guys. So you did one stratagem. I'll talk about
Def
the
answers def,
stratagem.
yes.
Yeah, that one seems quite interesting. I'll do emissaries. That's it, getting my words right. Emissaries of you need. For 1 CP, fight phase just after infantry unit has been selected, has selected its targets. Until the end of that phase, each time a model in your unit makes an attack, reroll a hit roll of 1, and if you are below, if your unit is below its starting strength, you can reroll the hit roll instead. So, hit rolls
Strong.
of 1 or all of them.
Nice. They do seem quite good, to be fair.
I think overall they've got a lot of utility. And I think Yanari have always been quite good, and they've always been very strong doing stuff out of sequence. And the lethal intent, lethal surge, and lethal reprisal sort of all fall into that. So it does feel very reminiscent of older versions of the army, without potentially being too broken. Because you're sort of just doing one of the things, whereas before it used to be, you've every time one of your units died, or in fact it was almost like anything died, one of your units gets to do something, and that could be multiple times in a back round, whereas now it's once per turn at the end sort of thing.
Yeah.
In terms of shooting at least. They've got some interesting options. We're on to not the second to last
The penultimate.
Penultimate, yes, the Seer Council. So this is the Fate Dice one again. So Strands of Fate is back. At the start of the first battle round, you generate Fate Dice by rolling a number of d6 based on the chart below. Basically, if you're 2,000 points, it's 6 dice. If it's a small game, it's 3 dice. And then if it's Onslaught, it's 9 dice. That's the number of d6s you roll. Each time you use one of the stratagems opposite, if your fate dice pool contains one or more fate dice showing the corresponding value in the table below, it's a table, Dan, you got to memorize, you can discard one of those corresponding fate dice. If you do reduce the CP cost of that usage by 1 CP, bearing in mind all the stratagems cost 1 CP, so it'd be for free, unless there's a counter ability making it cost more, of course. So basically, in the order that they're written in the book, the fate dice have just labelled them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's no duplicates. So each one does represent a different stratagem, and I guess depending on your favourite pick, you might want a particular one to do more often than some of the others. And in relation to that, the first enhancement, Lucid Eye, is a Aeldari Psycho model only. In your command phase, you can add 1 or subtract 1 to the value of 1 fate dice in your fate dice pool. So it gives you more flexibility for picking the right stratagem that you might want to use.
Indeed. Very, very helpful. Runes of Warding. Models in the Bearers unit have a Feel No Pain 4+ ability against mortal wounds, psych attacks, and critical wounds caused by attacks with devastating wound ability. Very strong. Because, yet again, typically with these things, you're getting Feel No Pain 4+ against psychic attacks. Whereas in this instance, it's against all the good stuff. Mortal wounds, psychic attacks, and critical wounds caused by devastating hits. So
that's
it's
sort of
very strong.
Yeah, the old school mortal wound defense that Custodes had, basically.
But very good.
Which is pretty good.
Because, as I say, typically these days, most people get access to that via, basically they get to neutralise the psychic element of it and then nothing else. So this obviously being Elder, they get 1 better.
Yeah, Yeah, and then our pick for Warned, which is number 2 on the Fate dice, if that makes a difference. So it's in the fight phase just after an enemy has selected its target. One Aeldari infantry unit from your army, excluding Wraith constructs, that was selected as the target of one or more of the attacking unit's attacks and is within 9 inches of a friendly Aeldari Psyker. Until the end of that phase, you subtract 1 from the hit roll, and, if that's not good enough, 1 from the wound roll.
Nice.
Strong. It's obviously got a limit that you've got to be near a Psyker, which I quite like because they thematically did that a lot in the other sort of Psyker focused detachment that had all the Wraith constructs. Then you've got to be near a Psyker to do something. So it's good that they've kind of thematically kept that through into this one as well.
I was just whizzing through all the stratagems just to remind myself what they are, and a lot of them are very, very useful, especially when you consider that in many instances you're not going to be spending the CP to utilise them. Yeah, I mean, even like Presentment of Dread, like, this is basically select one enemy unit within 18 of the visible to your model. That enemy unit must take a battle shock test subtracting 1. Again, happens in the command phase, and as a result can happen in either command phase. So it can be really annoying because, like, basically your opponent could be on an objective with no obligation to roll a battle shock test, but they're visible to one Aeldari Psyker unit, and then they're within 18, so they have to take a battle shock test at -1. If they fail that battle shock test, then, well, they haven't got that objective, unless, of course, it was sticky for some reason. Because, again, objective scoring happens after the command phase, as I understand it, because that's when you resolve battle
Well, it's
shock.
just sort of in the command phase, isn't it? So, yeah, it would be this, I assume, would take precedent before you do scoring.
Yeah, because my understanding of how it would sort of stack
You do
if
the
it
battle
was,
shock
is you
stuff
will
first.
resolve battle shock, and then once you basically conclude the command phase, you then are able to assert whether you would be able to control that objective or not, was my understanding. So,
and that sounds correct, I would assume.
yeah, that feels very, very good in and of itself. I mean, basically everything in here is pretty reasonable. The Unshrouded Truth, the ability basically to go back into reserves,
well, no, you sort of redeploy basically anywhere within.
Yeah, sorry, redeploy. Yeah, again, really reasonable. Yeah, it's all really good stuff, essentially. And effectively, what's really interesting about it is, as well, is it really helps you win games because you can just utilize your actual pool of CP to invest in things like manipulating the secondary missions. So you can obviously use CP to draw new secondaries if you're not happy with your draw. That's something that 9 times out of 10, when you're a, air quotation marks, normal army, you have to make strategic decisions about whether it's worth going for it, because CPs are typically quite scarce resources, whereas in this instance, you can be quite blasé about it. Obviously, you're still going to be able to access your re-rolls, and you're still going to be able to access other kind of universal stratagems that are generally quite useful. So it's a very interesting advantage to give an army that already seems stacked with some pretty strong options. This feels like a very, very strong detachment.
It's so 6 dice on a normal sort of sized game. Obviously, they don't replenish in any way. You've just got those 6 for the whole game, and depending on your dice rolls, you might get a bunch that you don't think you might use that often. But as you said, most of them seem pretty practical, and so effectively, that's 6. Potentially, it's 6 free CP that you're getting, which is quite a lot for a game, considering how much the game is designed to limit CP generation. I do like that it's not dice manipulation like it used to be previously, where it was like, cool, I'm just going to change a damage roll to a 6 or something. So it's better that they've sort of toned it down in that respect, and that they've sort of tied it to the stratagem. So I think that's quite a good use. of it. Although, as you say, it is a sort of another resource mechanic that you need to have in addition to the resource pool that you have for your battle focus stuff, and that they slightly confusingly all operate slightly differently. So that one regenerates every turn. This one is just once for the whole game, so that there's not a consistency there, but it does a different thing. So it's sort of it does work, I think.
Yeah, I like the fact that they utilised a mechanic to manipulate stratagems. I was thinking about it today. I was thinking, really, with the battle focus ability, it would have made more sense if they had, rather than given them battle focus, they just basically, all Aeldari armies had a pool of, like, I don't know, maybe rather than giving them 6 battle focus abilities, they could have just given them 3 universal stratagems that all Aeldari factions get, and they're just 0 CP strats. You know what I mean? Like, just be like, well, you can do this stuff, but it's 0 CP. Because then it's basically taking the mechanic and leaning into it. And then you still got the stratagem sort of restrictions, which is you can only use it once per phase, blah, 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 blah. But it felt like potentially more elegant solution, which obviously is in line with this. So I was thinking about that as well. But anyway, yeah, it seems very strong, is the long and short of it, which is no great shocker. So the last one is Aspect Host, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. So the detachment rule is Path of the Warrior. Each time an Aspect Warrior or Avatar of Cain unit from your army is selected to shoot or fight, select one of the following abilities fit to gain until the end of the phase. So you can basically get reroll your hit rolls of 1, or reroll your wound rolls of 1.
Ridiculously strong.
Yeah, pretty good.
Pretty good.
It's shoot or fight that you can do that, and it's unlimited power, Dan.
Yep. I mean, Aspect Warriors have been wallowing in a state of kind of for a while. Unsurprisingly, they just did a lot of new Aspect Warrior minis. So here is your really, really amazing Aspect Warrior detachment. Who would have thought?
So am I right in thinking, hold on, so yeah, Dire Avengers, yeah, so all the sort of the unique units like Dire Avengers, Swooping Hawks, Striking Scorpions, Fire Dragons, right? They're all Aspect Warriors. Okay, so which is all your good stuff, right? So you're gonna want loads of them. Obviously there's only ever one Avatar of Cain in your army. You can't have multiples of that. But most people will have an army literally filled to the gills of Aspect Warriors. So yeah, and I assume it's basically not stuff like your Wraith constructs, your fire platforms, your vehicles, and I assume your Guardians that aren't Aspect Warriors. Yeah. Okay, yeah. And there
is also another Aspect Warrior that always people forget about that I actually think. I genuinely think there's an argument to add this into most Aspect Warrior lists, because
like the snipery ones.
No, it's the Crimson Hunter.
That's an Aspect Warrior. Oh yeah, because there's meant to be an Autarch for that, isn't there?
There used to be a Exarch.
Oh, Exarch, sorry,
for the Crimson Hunters, but they don't have that now. It's just all a Crimson Hunter. But like basically, yeah, the Crimson Hunter is a very, 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 very solid option. It is a flyer, so it has a few restrictions, but one of the things that flyers are actually really good at that a lot of people often overlook is the fact that because they're aircraft, the way they interact with obscuring is really interesting, because basically aircraft effectively use true line of sight all the time, so the obscuring keyword doesn't factor into their vocabulary. Yeah, so basically if you can draw a line, you can shoot it, regardless of whether it's the
I thought that was only when shooting at a flyer. But
it happens when shooting at them, but when they're also shooting, it goes both ways.
That does sort of make sense because they're up high, right? I think it's just been. I don't think I've used a flyer for such a long time. I've had to check the nuance of that rule.
No, that's fair. That's fair. But yeah,
interesting.
And then because they're armed with some pretty reasonable, attacks. So they have the Bright Lances have 1 attack each, but very, very high damage. So strength 12, AP 3, D6 plus 2 damage. They've also got the Pulse Laser, which is 3 shots, hitting on 3s, strength 9, minus 2 AP and D6 damage. So those two things in concert, you're getting like 5 shots. I'd probably lean into the rerolls to wound rather than the rerolls to hit, just because 3+ to hit's pretty reasonable. And also, if you're firing at a unit with the fly keyword, you're adding 1 to your hit rolls and adding 1 to your wound rolls as well. So if you're shooting at something with the fly keyword, say, Sanguinary Guard, or what's a popular unit with fly these days that does the rounds?
Or any like jump pack, assault, intercessor, type stuff.
Yeah, that guy, this unit is just going to rinse through them, which I suppose, maybe potentially makes an argument for taking the Star Cannon instead, which is lower strength but and lower damage but more shots. But yeah, no, my sincere belief is the one Crimson Hunter. Don't go mad with it, but one Crimson Hunter is a worthwhile addition to your Aspect Warrior army.
Fair. Right, so on to the enhancements. I'm going to pick Mantle of Wisdom. It's Autarch or Autarch Wayleaper model only. While this bearer is leading an Aspect Warriors unit, each time the unit is selected to fight or shoot until the end of a phase, you gain both aspects of the Path of the Warrior detachment rule. So you get reroll hit rolls of 1 and wound rolls of 1.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's nice. What do you like to pick?
I mean, Strategic Savant sounds...
That's very you, Dan.
Yeah, indeed, as a Strategic Savant. So Autarchs and Autarch Wayleapers, while this barrier is leading an Aspect Warrior unit, add 1 to the objective control characteristic. So again, helpful, especially on the Wayleapers.
Yeah, they've got some quite interesting rules, which hopefully we can talk about
we'll
at
get
some
to that
point.
in a second.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that's sort of weird to me about this particular detachment, I would have loved to have seen them lean into the fluff around the Court of the Young King. That would have been cool to see.
What's that?
So the Court of the Young King is basically the ritual by which they summon the Avatar.
Oh, okay.
So basically, the way it works is an Exarch sacrifices their life to birth the Avatar.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Avatar goes to war as part of the Court of the Young King, and then essentially the Avatar is accompanied by Exarchs from each of the different Aspect temples. So effectively, the unit used to be, back in the day when you used to be able to take it, you could take like 5 different Exarchs drawn from different temples, and then an Avatar, and it was like a squad.
Nice.
So typically that was, 1 Banshee, 1 Scorpion, 1 Dire Avenger, etc., etc. But you could and should be able to take different Exarchs from different temples, because
like Crimson Hunter.
Well, unfortunately, it doesn't have an Exarch anymore. But wait, I mean, it does, but it doesn't. But the nuance of it always was that different craft worlds had different Aspect temples and different. They weren't all uniform. Like, not every craft world has a Dark Reaper temple and a Fire Dragon temple.
Right. Yeah.
Like they do diversify. Like Beltane was unique in so much as it had a really diverse, kind of fuller selection of temples, but other craft worlds like Iandan has very, very few Aspect temples, because basically they have very few people alive to take advantage of them. So it's the way it goes. But yeah, that would have been cool to see, but it's not really in here, so whatever. I mean, you can obviously headcanon it or bring it to life on the tabletop, but yeah. But we do have Kane's Vengeance, and Lord knows, Kane loves his vengeance. I was going to throw in a really weird Legacy of Kane reference, which is an old timey-wimey video game series that I love, but I'll move on from that. Your opponent's movement phase just after an enemy unit, excluding monster vehicles, as selected fallback. 1 Aspect Warriors unit or Avatar Kane from your army that is within engagement range of that enemy unit is the target, and all models in that enemy unit must take a Desperate Escape test. When doing so, if that enemy unit is battle shocked, subtract 1 from that. So that's really strong. Like, basically, you want to leave combat with my Avatar, 1 CP, whether you're battle shocked or not, you're taking Desperate Escape tests, which is potentially quite devastating if you roll poorly.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things in 40k you can't re-roll. So there you go.
Can you not, because it's a test?
Yeah, you can't. So no, is the long and short of it. You can. There are specific rulings on what you can re-roll with CP re-rolls, and as far as I'm aware, very
Because
few.
I thought I looked this up recently. Hold on, let's have a quick test. So it's, what was it, command reroll. So it says effects. You can reroll that roll, test, or saving throw. Oh, but then it goes into more detail. So advanced roll, charge roll, desperate escape test, or hazardous test.
Oh, there you go.
For your unit, hit roll, wound roll, damage roll, or saving throw, or roll to determine a number of attacks with a weapon. So yeah, it's odd. It feels like you shouldn't, because to me, it's like, does your vehicle blow up? It should be a super rare thing that if it happens, you just failed it and you can't re-roll it. So yeah, I don't quite know why they've done that. I feel like that's a bit of a mistake.
40k players feel bad when stuff bad happens to them.
Yeah, it's like, oh, my vehicle's got to fall back. Oh no, I failed it. And I was like, yeah, it's gone. That's the game. I'm gonna call out two stratagems. One's really an honourable mention. One's Doom Inescapable, which is your Avatar of Cain in your shooting phase. It turns its Wailing Doom weapon into range 18 inches and damage characteristic of 8. So if we quickly look at the Avatar of Cain, its Wailing Doom is sustained hits D3. It's only one attack though, and range of 12, but that becomes now 18. But sustained hits 3, or D3. So that's worth bearing in mind. You're hitting on 2s, your strength 16, and your AP -4, and you're normally damage D6 plus 2, so you do cap at 8, but it just becomes a flat 8, which is fantastic.
Extraordinarily good.
Which, you know, if you manage to roll a 6 followed by a 6 for your hit roll, that is a lot of potential damage.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But the one I thought was really interesting that I really want to talk about is Preternatural Precision. For 1 CP. In your shooting phase, select one Aspect Warriors unit that they haven't shot with yet. Each time you use a stratagem, you can remove one Aspect Shrine token your unit has, which is like a little token on its data sheet. Yeah. Then select one of the following abilities, or select 2 of the following abilities if you removed an Aspect Shrine token during this usage of this stratagem. So I guess you've got to remove 2 and you get 2, right? I think that's what it's trying to say, because you can because you get 1 per 5 normally. So if you've got a 10-man squad, you can remove both. So you can gain Ignores Cover, Lethal Hits, or Sustained Hits 1 that affects ranged weapons until the end of that phase.
Strong.
So yeah, it could be if you go like, oh cool, Lethal Hits and Sustained Hits 1. And you do a lot of damage.
You could do a lot of work there. A lot of work
on your melter guys.
Oh yeah, the Fire Dragons are definitely seeing a lot of love at the moment in terms of what they can essentially do. I mean, we may as well get into some data sheets and may as well start by talking about them, because I mean, they're definitely one of the buzzword units of the decks.
Yeah. Before we do that, is it worth sort of giving your thoughts on the detachments? And I
mean, they're all pretty good except for the Guardian one, which you're not going to take because everything else is better.
Yeah, I was thinking the Aspect Host wasn't that great either. That would be like my second pick. But actually, knowing that it affects all the Aspect Warriors, and that is all the data sheets, I'm like, oh, actually, that is quite
the Aspect one enhances the stuff that's really good in this book. So
yes, yeah.
I think on balance, what was it called? The Seer Council one.
Seer Council was the Fate Dice one.
Yeah, that is pretty strong, to be fair. Warhost has a few interesting options, but realistically, I think if you're looking at it from a competitive lens, you're probably going to look at, I want to take lots of Aspect Warriors, so Aspect Host. I want to have a lot of mobility and shenanigans. Seer Council, I want to just be a bit more of a powerhouse with a bit more of a variety of units and probably a little bit more kind of killiness. Probably Ynnari is probably where you're going to go. But obviously, if you're a Harlequins purist, you're going to go Harlequins. And maybe, just maybe, there's a chance that you might, lean into some of the other Warhost ones. if you have a specific type of archetype. If you want to do, Wraith constructs, you want to do the Spirit Host stuff, fair enough. But I think really, yeah, if you're looking at it through the lens of what seems really good, I think those three, so Aspect Host, Seer Council, and Ynnari seem pretty good. But again, they all seem pretty strong. Like, there's not too much, because even the Guardian one has some play.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not too much chaff in this selection.
Yeah, it's the fact that you get 8 detachments, and I appreciate that 2 of them are sort of very like sub-faction specific for Harlequins and Ynnari that are sort of included in this book. So you've just got 6 generic ones on top. It just feels like a lot, and it's like it just goes to show how much love Elder get, because a lot of the other, I'm sure we've had a couple of books where it's like you just get like 4 detachments, like you barely get any. And I think it's because there are a lot of theming to Elder. Like they want to do the Wind Rider host.
Yeah.
They want to do, I feel like the Guardian specific one feels the least thematic, but maybe it's just because it's the most generic one that most people don't want to play into, because Guardians of themselves are a little bit boring now when you have all the different aspect warriors.
Yeah, which is a shame, but also makes sense. Like, I've always felt like Elder of probably the second most well-developed kind of, 40k faction after Marines, and probably after Guards, to be fair.
Definitely the most developed Xenos race, right?
Oh, easily the most developed Xenos. Yeah. I mean, and the thing is about Elder is they've done a really good job of defining different archetypes. The Wild Riders of Samhain, the Sword Wind of Beltan, the Ghost Warriors of Iandan, the Black Guardians of Ulfway, the Rangers or Pathfinders of Eltok. They're all very interesting archetypes that have developed in really fun, interesting ways. So, there's like 5 armies there that have really distinct identities. And in many ways, some of those ideas aren't even that really well realised in this selection of 6. So they have kind of diversified and gone in interesting ways with it. They haven't just sort of leaned into those 3 specific archetypes. Because, I'll be honest with you, the Wild Riders of Samhain always made no sense, because they always used to be... Samhain are like a more savage, more bestial sort of craft world by the standard of craft worlds. So they have lots of jet bikes. But the inspiration was, or the ideation around it was, these are jet bikes that are flying around with like wild riders with axes lopping people's heads off, but it was never really realised on the tabletop. So you always had these rules where they were like, your Samhain jet bikes are really good in combat. And it's like, except they're not. Oh, yeah.
Right.
That.
Yeah. I mean, it's in a way, it's good that we don't have Exodites, and that they haven't fleshed out the pirates, right? The Corsairs, because then that'd be another 2 detachments that you'd be getting, and this would just be an absolute weighty tome.
I think it's probable that Corsairs could go their own way. I've heard rumours
like sort of Drakari style and get their own.
Which is a weird one, because I feel like with Corsairs it does make sense to do them, because they've got a really beautiful range of they've got a really beautiful kill team box. But yeah, like, I think Corsairs could develop into something super fun. The problem is they're so relatively close to Drakari, at least visually it almost feels unnecessary. But within the fluff, they're very conceptually different from Drakari, so it does make sense.
Yeah, and you couldn't really add them into the Aeldari Codex, because they're not Drakari. Well, I'm just thinking you could have them in there like how Harlequins are in the Aeldari Codex. Like, it's sort of like their mirror to them, and it's like it gives Drakari sort of an extra sub-faction to tap into, even though they're not Drakari, but they are pirates, so... in a way, they're the good version of Drakari in more respects than one, perhaps. It'd be interesting to see what they do with that, because there's a lot of scope within the Elder sort of sub-factions to do a bunch of stuff.
Totally.
But then, like with Harlequins were their own faction for a while, and they had their own codex. but then they sort of just capped them. They were like, these are the units you get, and that's it. And they've never really developed the range, and that's why they've sort of felt like they've gotten folded back into the main book.
Yeah, for sure. Right. Let's talk about some of these units so as we can wrap this up, because yet again, it's getting late. So yeah, Fugin's a really interesting one because he's been creating a bit of a hubbub. So Fugin himself basically increases the range of melter weapons by 6 and has the ability to stand up after he's dead. So once he's been destroyed, he gets back up again on a
guess
2+.
what? Guess what, Dan? He gets all his wounds back.
Well, of course, he's Fugin, for goodness sake, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think all the Phoenix Laws are really strong.
Very strong.
And it's just like, oh, great, this guy gets up full wounds, of course. All right, got loads of really great abilities. And it's like, I do get it because they are Phoenix Lords. But, like, there's so many of them, and they're all really good.
Yeah, incredibly good.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the thing with him, right? So you can add him to a unit of Fire Dragons, obviously. His range weapon is the Searsong Beam or Searsong Lance. So in beam form, it is a sustained hits 2, free shot, hitting on 2, strength 8, -3, 2 damage shot. So that's in its beam form. But if it's in its lance form, it is 1 shot, hitting on 2s, strength 14, which is pretty strong, -4 AP and D6. And if you are within melter range, which bear in mind is 12 inches for this guy, because if he's leading a unit of Fire Dragons, his range of 18 is increased to 24. So his melter range becomes 12. It's D6 plus 6. So
very strong.
Very strong.
Yeah, I always find these guys, they're just a bit overkill because you've got so many of them. It feels like you're gonna kill the thing. I mean, unless you're targeting like really big things like super heavies, in which case they're probably just about right. But it feels like a normal vehicle like a Rhino is just going to get blown away unless you roll terribly.
Well, between this guy and the rest of your Fire Dragons, there's no hope. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, even in combat, this guy's got 6 attacks, hitting on 2, strength 5, -4, free damage. So he's even punchy in that situation.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, because what's interesting, so talk about the Fire Dragons as well, is like they can take a bit of punchy stuff as well. So they come in units of 10. Oh, well, 5 to 10 is their options. And then the Exarch can take the normal weapon, which is what he gets the Dragon Fusion... No, the Exarch Dragon Fusion gun. But you can swap it out for the Dragon Breath Flamer or the Dragon Fusion Pistol and 1 Dragon Axe or 1 Fire Pike. And then the Dragon Axe is, 3 attacks, hits on 3, strength 6, -4 AP, and then D6 damage. So it's like I guess it's like a melter axe to the face. And then a bit like the Eradicators, they get assured destruction. So in your shooting phase, each time a model targets a monster or a vehicle unit, because that is obviously what you're going to be shooting melters at, you can re-roll the hit roll and the wound roll and the damage roll, which is just that's one of those game mechanics where you say quite often, why bother even rolling, just let them do the thing, because that's insanely good. Obviously the main stipulation is there's strength 9 for melter, and most vehicles have a slightly higher damage, so that's the thing you really need to re-roll. But yeah, it feels overkill. And even with the Eradicators, they've got the exact same ability, but they come in squad sizes of 3 to 6.
Yeah.
And technically one of them can take a multi-melter, I guess.
And they're 2 shots each, to be fair.
They are, and they do have longer range. They are range 18, as opposed to range 12 for these guys.
Well, these guys are range 18 because Fugin's in there.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, you do have to bolt him on.
But you really aren't taking one without the other.
Yeah, I honestly feel like that shield destruction ability on both of them is just a bit broken. I get why, because it feels bad when you roll badly, and it's like, I rolled a 1 to hit, and my big thing, my one-shot weapon's just not done it. But it's like, well, that's the game. It's meant to have those things baked in.
Well, that's not the game anymore, Phil.
No, it's all rerolls. It's all rerolls all the time. That's what we like.
Well, this is it, right? Because you can use your aspect shrine. You can
So it takes
you
a
can
wound
change the
roll to a
result of one hit.
6.
Yeah, which is pretty reasonable. And again, you obviously, if you're taking them in the aspect host, you're re-rolling your hit rolls probably. Well, you're re-rolling everything anyway if you're shooting a monster, so it's a moot point. So,
Oh, actually,
yeah.
I've just realised the Exarch can take the Dragon Fusion Gun, which also has Melter 6 on it as well. So you can have 2 models in your unit if you've got Fugan as well that are doing Melter 6 in like bonus damage.
The only variable is that the Exarch will be doing it within 9 inches rather than 12.
Yes, because because it'd be 18 with Fugan.
Yeah. But the point is it's a very, very, very potent squad that can do some serious work. Now, obviously, whatever you throw it at is probably dead, but then you're probably dead in return. But the way that their battle focus tokens work and other things, you can probably lean on the wave serpent transports
to jump back in, or what was the one? There was the unit can come back and all its models come back alive. Oh, that's Guardians only.
That was Guardians specific.
Okay,
yeah.
well, thank God for that. I mean,
But this is the thing, right? Like, still, you could use like the added durability of like wave serpents, although I don't really think they're necessary, because literally, yeah, once you're ready to step out and pounce on something, you just kind of move out, ping the battle focus on it so as they can't overwatch you. So, their best chance of dealing with you would maybe be to overwatch you. You pop out, spend the CP, kill the thing, and then in their movement phase, pen the point, run away. And it's just like brilliant. It's it's a very, very, very strong unit with a lot of really, really scary possibilities. The only thing that essentially lets it down is that you won't have too much of a hard time wiping it, but you need to have specific types of units to do it. But I think that's where the meta will evolve and where people will start to build lists to better account for the Elder, because the reality is that Elder players, certainly Elder players running these kind of aspect warrior lists, they don't like being alpha struck, and they don't like people pushing the tempo on them, which lots of armies have the opportunities to do. Jinxed in Occult are going to give them a hard time. Tyranids are going to give them a hard time. Some of the Space Marine builds will certainly give them a hard time. As much as this unit will delete any vehicle in the game, they don't like being shot by a unit of 5 intercessors. 5 intercessors will ruin their day.
Especially now shoot twice. I was on the receiving end of them just today, having a game with a buddy, and it wasn't fun.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, you get shot by like a shed load of bolter rounds, and you're 3 up armor, albeit with a 5 up invuln, but ultimately, who cares at the end of the day? You're going to chew through it. And I think that's the thing with these stuff is like that. And that's the nuance for the Aeldari players. Yes, these armies and these units are strong, but the theory is sound that in the right circumstances, you can't just be frivolous with it. You're not going to be able just to turn up with 10 fire dragons and fugue and guarantee victory every time. You gotta maximize
know how to use
output.
them, and especially with them, they need a delivery system to get them where they need to be, whether that's transport or potentially using particular detachment with stratagems to sort of put them in strategic reserve and come on the board edge or something to get them around.
I mean, I really like the combination, as I say. Like, I think the Falcon's super interesting because you can use the star engines on the Falcon, which is your D6 +1 to your normal move characteristic. The Falcon, I believe, is move 14. Falcon, movement 14. So obviously, if you roll really well and you get between a 5 and a 6 on the d6 roll, so the upper third. That's a 6 or 7 inch move on top. So that could be between, say, 20, 21 inch move. Then it's still a normal move, so the fire dragons can still exit. Yes, it's just 5 fire dragons and maybe an Altark or maybe Fugan. Truth be told, I kind of leaned into the idea of going Altark because I think the Altark is actually, potentially a more kind of cost-effective option for this kind of play. So 5 fire dragons, Altark, Falcon, send that up. The Altark himself can also have a dragon fusion gun. Yes, it's not melter free. It's not melter 6. It's melter free. Also, as well, probably worth remembering to mention that these guns are assault weapons as well. So you can just assault out of the thing. So
an advance, yeah.
Yeah, so essentially you can use the Falcon, spend the battle focus, get your d6 plus 1, move it, disembark free, advance 7 plus d6 plus 1, and then advance d6 plus 1, advance 7 plus your d6, and then just shoot.
Oh, still strong.
It is strong. And the thing is that unit is not that expensive. So the fire dragons, so the Altark is 75 points, and the fire dragons are a whopping 100 points. So 175 points. And that unit pretty much kills any mid-vehicle that you can put at it. You still have the...
will comparably be around 100 points, 150.
Oh, easily,
even.
or 200 points maybe. I mean, you could... If you got lucky, you could kill a Land Raider with this pretty effortlessly.
Yeah, I guess if it's got an invuln save, it's going to be a bit harder. But if it's like a guard or Space Marine one that doesn't have an invuln save, it should be quite straightforward.
Oh god, yeah. Things like your Rogal Dawns really don't like this. Like, this is not fun for them. Admittedly, Rogal Dawns are 180.
We don't know because the Codex isn't out yet.
Yeah, true, the Codex.
We'll find out next episode.
Yeah, but anyway, long story short is you could do some really good stuff with them as a unit, and I think that's the thing. Like, the really kind of simple way of approaching it is to go, take 10 of them and Fugan. But really, actually, when you start to think about their utility and what they trade into, I think genuinely units of 5 with Altarks are probably more interesting. But again, it's down to personal preference.
Well, exactly, yeah, and potentially if you've got Fugan or the the Exarch with the Dragon Axe, you still have some close combat punch if you want to sort of charge in and try and finish something off if it's got 1 or 2 wounds left. It's certainly doable. Did you want to look
Anything
at
you wanted to talk about?
Well, I'd like to talk about, is it Lekis? The new Warp Spider Phoenix Lord.
Phoenix Lord. Well, indeed. We can't talk about them without talking about the Warp Spiders themselves.
Well, exactly.
Let's talk about it.
So he's movement 12, toughness 3, save of 2+, invuln of 4, 5 wounds, leadership 6, and 1 OC. He's got deep strike.
I think, by the way, I think it's a she.
Oh, is it?
I think so.
It does say she. Yes, you're right. Well, they've got masks on. They could be gender neutral. Who knows how they're going to identify? But yes, I'll go with she. Fair enough. Thank you for the correction. They've got Empiric Ambush. So while this model is leading a unit, that unit is eligible to declare a charge in a turn in which it's use its Flicker Jump ability, which we'll get onto in a minute. That's the ability that the Warp Spiders have. To jump around the table, and then she's got Whispering Web. In your shooting phase, after this model has shot, select one enemy unit hit by one or more of those attacks until the end of the turn. Each time a friendly Aeldari model makes an attack that targets the unit, an unmodified hit roll of 5 scores a critical hit. And that's at the end of a turn, and it just says attack, so that includes combat as well as shooting.
Strong.
They've got the Brood Twain, which is their ranged weapon, so it ignores cover, torrent, twin linked, 12-inch range, D6 plus 3 attacks, strength 6 minus 2 AP, but only 1 damage, which is surprising almost.
I know, imagine.
I know. Then melee weapons, I've got Spider Fang, which is extra attacks and lethal hits. 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 4, minus 2 AP, 1 damage. And then the
Shocker.
Weave Render, lethal hits. 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 6, minus 2, 2 damage. So, that's 10 attacks in total. That's, that is
She's
pretty
handy.
good. Even though the extra attack is only damage 1, but for extra attacks, that's what I'd probably like. I think any more would be ridiculous.
Well, indeed.
And then if we jump, no pun intended, to the Warp Spiders, they also have 12-inch move baked in. They've also got a 5-up invulnerable save. I won't read
As all Aspect Warriors do.
Do they? Really?
Yep.
God damn it, Elder. They also have Deep Strike. Their Flicker Jump ability is a thing worth talking about. In your movement phase, each time this unit is selected to make a normal move, it can use this ability. If it does, until the end of that turn, this unit is not eligible to declare a charge, unless you've got the Phoenix Lord with them. But you change the move characteristic to not 12, but 24 inches, so they double their move. However, they effectively have to make a hazardous test. So at the end, each time they've used this ability, at the end of a phase, roll a d6 for each model in that unit. For each one, that unit suffers 1 mortal wound. Which, I like that there's a trade-off for a change. I like that they just don't get to do it for free and just not charge. That there is some danger to it, so you're not going to do this all the time. But the fact that they move 12 inches anyway means, unless you're super desperate or you want to shoot at something or maybe grab a particular objective, especially didn't we see that there was a way of giving them extra OC, which I think was one of the detachments, or was it?
No, there was a specific enhancement that could increase the OC of the Altark Wayleaper, who can lead this unit.
Okay. Right. That would be it. And then, the standard weapon... I'll just say the Aspect Shrine again, like before, is change a wound roll to a 6. And the bog standard weapon they get is the Death Spinner, which is ignores cover torrents, 12-inch range, attacks d6, strength 4, minus 1 AP, 1 damage, which sort of feels a bit underwhelming in comparison to everything else in this book.
Well, I mean, when you consider that it is an extraordinarily mobile, anti-chaff unit, it's very, very good at getting
the fact
through
that
things.
It's units of 5 to 10, and each one gets d6 attacks, and they all auto hit, right? That the fact that it's only AP 1 and 1 damage almost doesn't make much difference because the sheer number of dice you'll be rolling is quite strong. And then you can also be +1 to reroll your wound rolls as well in the right detachment.
Yeah, and this is the thing: if you're basically running, orcs, nids, even things like world eaters. I was almost going to do a U and call them word bearers. World eaters. Although I think yours is the other way around. Anyway, it doesn't matter. World eaters with jackals, they're always in people's lists. So yeah, these guys are just again, really interesting to imagine how a unit like this influences the overall meta, because now, there was always a prevalence of things like orc armies with grot squads filling up the backboard edge, doing a bunch of things, or little throwaway demon units, or even nurgling, stuff like that, floating about, getting in your way. These guys will just clear out anything and everything. Very efficiently.
Yeah, the detachments that allow you to put stuff back into strategic reserve, these are going to be a very strong contender for that, either to do that thing, kind of clear out the odd unit or grab objectives.
They've just got loads of utility. There's very few reasons not to take them. Yes, okay, fair enough. They're not always going to be doing the most damage, against Custodes. Cool. But then that being said, against Custodes, everything bounces. So having a lot of shots doesn't hurt, especially when
No, true.
you're ignoring cover and it's -1, which is kind of the sweet spot for Custodes. Custodes players hate rolling 3+s.
Yeah,
4+s
I
and
mean,
2+s.
yeah,
they do for
-2
days.
is -2 AP would be very strong against them. But yeah, the sheer number of shots versus with the -1 is still pretty good, as you say.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Probably look at 5-man units. I think the reality of the situation is if you're going for the Phoenix Lord build, 9 times out of 10, you're better off going with the 10-man units. But for me, see, I keep looking at the Altarks. Again, the Altark Way Leapers seem way more efficient because they're only like 80 points for the Way Leaper. And you can put that in the unit. Gives you potentially a little bit of extra combat potential, but can add some new kind of different guns into the mixture as well. But again,
because they also get deep strike, so they still be able to do all the same stuff, and they've actually got 14-inch movement, so can keep up with them.
They're very strong. Like, this is the thing. Like, I genuinely think the Altarks. I think at first, when you read the book the first time, you kind of start fantasizing about big units with Phoenix Lords and how cool that could be, and it definitely is cool. But if you want to, I genuinely think if you want to build armies that are a little bit more powerful in terms of their utility and their overall kind of flexibility, even, I think you'll have more fun and more success leaning into the Altark options.
Yeah, I mean, especially with the Warp Spiders, because they got deep strike, right? They've only got a 12-inch range weapon. So if you've got a 10-man unit, you've got to, let's say you're deep striking down, you've got to be 9 inches away. That only gives you 3 inches sort of like of a buffer zone where you've got to fit all 10 models to ideally all be within range of the target that you're trying to shoot at. That's a lot harder to do than a 5-man unit that can just squeeze into a gap somewhere. I mean, if you're going to... I mean, potentially you could still just start them on the board and just do your 24-inch move across anywhere onto the table and just shoot something and take the hit on maybe a couple of them dying. So
but you just get a lot of flexibility with them. I think both the Fire Dragons and the Warp Spiders are very strong. I think the Banshees are obviously very strong, just because of how they... I mean, if there was an argument for a quintessential kind of, like, an essential, I suppose, Aspect Warrior Phoenix Lord combo, Jane Czar and the Howling Banshees is it. Just because of how those two things work together. I'm really conscious of how long we've done this for now and also the time, so I don't want to kind of get crazy into the weeds on all this stuff, but, like, basically, Jane Czar is good because she gives you the ability where you can, when targeting characters, so each time this model, so Jane Czar specifically, she re-rolls wound rolls, but essentially when the unit advances, i.e. the Banshees, their movement becomes a flat move of 6 rather than a d6 roll, which is super useful. And then Howling Banshees themselves have the ability to advance and charge, which is super strong.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then their melee weapons are basically the Banshee Blade is weapon skill 2+, strength 4, -2, 2 damage, anti-infantry 3+.
Oh yeah, she's got that anti-infantry 3+ as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but all the Banshees have it too. So literally... So literally, they're movement 8 as well, Banshees. So you were saying before everything in the Codex is movement 7. These are actually movement 8 as well. So basically with this, you can move 14. Again, if you wanted to, these guys with a Wave Serpent. Wave Serpent moves 14 plus D6 plus 1 because battle focus.
Yeah.
Then you get out 3, then you can advance 14 out of it. It's like literally like... You will kill whatever you want to turn 1. Nothing can hide.
There's so much movement in this book, and at first I thought it was almost like a downside. In a way, it is because it's like the battle focus stuff is all movement. All the stat lines are very good at movement and often have extra abilities baked into a sheet for even more movement. And it's like, at what point does your 12 really need to become a 24 inches, right? And but I think it just makes them. It will make them super strong, especially in the sort of the mini meta or micro meta of the actual game design around the deck of cards and your missions. And I need to get a unit into this corner. I need to get on this battle edge or be in my opponent's deployment zone. All of this stuff feels doable pretty much, as you say, from turn one if you really wanted to, which is incredibly powerful. And even if you've only got a handful of models left at the end of the game, they could get around everywhere on the table to do the things that they need to do, which, movement-focused armies just are inherently strong.
Yeah, very much so. And again, I think that's the thing. These aspect warrior units aren't drastically expensive. Nothing is necessarily drastically expensive, right? Like 5 Dark Reapers, 90 points. 5 Dire Avengers, 75 points. 5 Fire Dragons, 100 points. Banshees, 90 points. Scorpions, 75 points. Swooping Hawks, 85 points, right? Like Warp Spiders, 95 points, right? So very efficient.
If you think about it, they're probably double the size of, double the points of an average guard squad. And it's like, probably, if that's for a 5-man you're talking about, so it actually means they're sort of 4 times as expensive, because you're halving the number of aspect warriors per guardsman, but doubling the points. But they're sort of so much better. It's like they've got free up save, they've got an invuln save, their weapons are through the roof, they've got amazing, crazy abilities. It's like that feels very kind of competitively priced for what they are.
For as good as they are 1 wound, free up armor.
That's like their only weakness, and that's the.
It's a big weakness. In a game with the lethality as high as this, 1 wound, free up armor is literally, in 40k terms, especially on a 5 model unit. Admittedly, the 5 model unit's got 6 wounds because the Exarchs have got 2
an extra wound. Yeah, no, you're all right. Yeah,
but
no, that's a good point. I would say.
But literally,
bolters will go through them. Lasguns should go through them. Yeah, 5
intercessors will kill. If 5 intercessors can shoot one of these units, they're dead.
Yeah, that's true.
But then 5 intercessors.
But then can they shoot them because you've got like the battle focus to move around? You have the stratagems to hide them. So you do get some defensive abilities.
The thing is, maybe the thing is, I suppose the problem is with the Elder Army and why they look really strong is they trade into a lot of stuff that has been utilizing some level of durability or some level of elite status. So when you're looking at it from the perspective of a Custodes player, they look at Elder and go, ooh, that's a bit much, because they can't quite keep pace and they're getting out, maneuvered.
Yeah.
Custodes are very durable, but not durable enough to sustain the many cuts combined with the consistent movement of Aeldari. Space Marines are the same, like very, very good at dealing with these problems, but not when they are coming frequently and dispersing in different ways. So I think that's the interesting thing about it, is like, yes, there are armies that are going to have to change their approach in order to have competitive viability against this. I think Custody Wardens are not going to like this, because it's going to be really difficult for a Custodes player to know when to pop their Feel No Pain, because these things are just going to be... The problem is, if you look at it in the perspective of, in a game of 40k, you're either asking questions or answering questions. The problem is the Elder Army asks a lot of questions, and it gets to a point where you really start running out of answers really quickly when your army is Custodes or Marines.
Yeah, I think with Custodes, Elder could run rings around them because their movement's so high. The Custodes player, when it catches a unit, it will kill it 9
Yeah, but
times
that's
out of
true of
10.
anything. Like, custodians kill Imperial Knights when they catch them.
Oh yeah, but I mean, is Eldari can outrun custodies with ease and just sort of
Easily.
dance circles around them, so they can't get caught into combat. Whereas knights don't really have that luxury a lot of the time.
But then it becomes that conversation where, for custodians, do you need to lean more into the sisters element? And do you need maybe some Imperial agents? And do you need things that will, ultimately you're still going to be taking your core key units, your wardens, your, guard, your shield captains, etc.
Yeah.
But you just have to rethink it. I don't think this army is broken. I just think they're really good. But I think everything's really good. I think the problem is with this army is it's really good in a dimension where nothing has necessarily been this tricksy up till now. And although I don't think they're nearly as big a problem as they were when the index came out, I think they are, as I say, asking questions that all current lists that have been performing well don't have good answers to. And I think that's the thing that people have to adjust for, because in a meta with this book in it, you have to figure out what you can do. But I genuinely believe that there are a lot of armies that go really well into Elder. Like, as I say, GSC, NIDS, Drakari are obviously very strong into them. Necrons, probably not, but probably build dependent. Again, maybe Guard. I think Guard probably on balance, again, without having read the new book properly. But from what I've seen, it seems like Guard probably will match up well with them, because Guard have enough answers.
Right.
It's that thing where it's like, there's enough of us here. And the problem is it doesn't matter how efficient Eldar are at killing things, they're still only realistically killing one. Each unit's only really killing one thing a turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
because I guess Elder have always been like glass cannons, right? They do hit very
Always.
hard, but they're very weak, as you're saying, with their 1 wound and their 3-up save. However, quite often they're meant to historically be much more of an elite army, but they've become much more of a horde army with like cheap bodies.
Everything's gone that way though. That's just the game.
Yeah, true.
2,000 point Warhammer 40,000 is Horde Hammer. That's just it now.
True, but my point was more. It doesn't really matter that they're only a 3-up save and toughness 3, 1 wound if there is 100 bodies on the table, because you could fit that many aspect warriors in an army. But then I guess that needs to just pan out as the game goes on, and we see how good they'll be on the tabletop for their points, basically.
Absolutely. I think that pretty much wraps it up on the Elder topic. I love the book, to be fair. I think it's really cool. I like the way that they've kind of realised them. I like the new miniatures. Within the confines of 10th edition, this feels like a really good book. The problem is with it is that obviously it feels really strong, but then that's how Elder always perform.
Yeah.
I think the thing I would say to people is just remember that everything feels strong these days. Yes, this seems extraordinarily strong on paper, but I do think there are solutions to it. I think the thing is my only recommendation to people who are playing against it is always just try and think about what the Elder player is looking for as kind of an optimal, not win condition, but trade. And a lot of the time what Elder players are looking for are gaps in your deployment, gaps in your formations, opportunities to pick off stragglers. Think of them as predator animals. Like, they're going to be identifying the pack, and they're going to try and look for what feels like odds on the easiest win. Certainly in turns 1 and 2, they're going to be looking for where can I go to get the most bang for my buck, because that's their headspace all the time, is how am I trading upwards, which admittedly is very 40k anyway in general. But if you're looking to deal with them, what you need to do is try and create opportunities that seem appealing, but actually are themselves traps. Utilise your rapid ingress, utilise, smaller kind of less expensive units to maybe kind of bait out opportunities, or use bigger elite units to create opportunities. I'm a big advocate for using threats as ways of kind of, putting people out of position. I was talking to a friend about this the other day. They're going to a doubles event that's actually a proper like tournament doubles event rather than the one that me and Phil are going to, which is a little bit more fluffy. And I was saying that they were looking at doing Tau and Blood Angels, and we were talking about the concept of using Death Company as a tool to kind of unlabel the Tau to come into effect, because the notion would be that you'd sort of fling the Death Company forwards in an almost kind of like YOLO type approach. And sure, if they kill stuff, that's really good, but more likely than not, your opponent's going to make maneuvers to try and deal with those Death Company because they're a problem that you have to respect. But in so doing, you can hopefully exploit opportunities with your Tau army in this example to essentially capitalise and again trade up against them. And I think that's true of when you're playing against Eldar. You just kind of have to understand the matchup and understand what your options are. But look, they are definitely a boogeyman. They are definitely going to feel bad when you're figuring out what to do against them. But as someone who's played a lot of them over the years, this doesn't feel especially terrifying. It just feels really good, which is great for Eldar players. It's a bit sucky for people who aren't playing them. But how good will it feel when you figure out the matchup and, beat them? Because I think that's the thing with them. I think you can outsmart and outmaneuver a lot of people who are running these kind of lists. You just got to kind of think it through. But that just comes with time, rep, experience. But yeah, overall, I would say interesting book. Feels really strong. Maybe not strong as people are making out, but I reserve the right to be wrong about that. They're probably already winning every tournament under the sun, but then it's early. So who knows? But yeah, my feel is they seem fine. But is what it is. Phil, what's your closing statement on these?
Yeah, they seem good. They seem strong because as a choice as an Eldar player, you're sort of spoilt. All the detachments seem pretty viable. Obviously, we talked about one or two that may be a bit weaker, but normally you look at a codex and there's like one really good, outstanding detachment and the rest are a bit mid. And then you're spoiled for choice with all your units. They all seem really good. All the all the Phoenix Lords seem really great, and that they've got great combos with those units. And it's like almost you want to take them all, but you probably can't fit them all into your army. So it's the difficult decisions will be picking from the cream of the crop to put your then cherry on top of your cake, because there's too many good choices to make, which is the sign of a good codex, I think, when everything feels good and viable, and you're not taking something, you're doing it for thematic reasons, and always fluffy but not very good. It actually feels like all of this stuff will be good, which is what we want. And we didn't really even talk about the fact that there's the Corsairs are in there as well, which is great. The fact that there's Harlequins in Yunari, and that they all seem really good options as well, despite us often saying Yunari feel out of step within the lore, that they haven't really done much with them. It's good that they're there and they're still viable, and that you've got options.
Yeah, Yunari have always been good on the tabletop and never necessarily as well realised. But I think the thing is it's one of those. Anyway, there we go. That was that. Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Appreciate you putting up with the weirdness that was me recording remotely, Phil. Thank you. Bit of a weird week, but is what it is. Hopefully normal service will resume hereafter. My hotel room is very, very near a nightclub. So I've been hearing lots of background noise while recording this. So hopefully the echo cancelling has been doing its job.
I mean, I can't say I can hear anything.
Well, there we go. Well, hopefully that's a positive sign. Anyway, cheers very much, everyone. Transitional noise.